There are creatures on this planet that seem almost too extraordinary to be real. Animals so perfectly engineered by millions of years of evolution that they appear less like living beings and more like weapons forged in the heart of nature itself. And then there is the Harpy Eagle. A bird so magnificent, so terrifyingly powerful, so breathtakingly precise in everything it does, that once you truly understand what this animal is capable of, you will never look at the natural world the same way again. This is not simply a story about a large bird. This is the story of the most formidable aerial predator to ever rule a rainforest canopy. This is the story of a creature that has mastered the art of survival in one of the most complex, dense, and unforgiving ecosystems on the face of the earth. A creature that hunts with the tactical intelligence of a seasoned warrior, the physical power of a hydraulic machine, and the aerodynamic grace of a fighter jet threading its way through a living, breathing obstacle course of ancient trees and tangled vines. Welcome. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching this video and what time you are watching it. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos, because what we are about to explore together over the next 2 hours is going to take you deep into the world of a legend. The Harpy Eagle. The undisputed apex predator of the South American rainforest. To truly appreciate what the Harpy Eagle is, you first have to understand where it lives. Because the environment that shaped this bird is not just a backdrop to its story. It is the very forge in which every single one of its extraordinary adaptations was hammered into existence over tens of millions of years of relentless evolutionary pressure. The South American rainforest, and particularly the vast, sprawling, incomprehensibly complex ecosystem of the Amazon basin, is not simply a forest. It is the most biologically dense environment that has ever existed on this planet. It covers an area so enormous that the numbers almost lose meaning. Stretching across multiple countries, blanketing millions of square kilometers in a continuous, layered, living cathedral of vegetation, the Amazon rainforest is home to an estimated 10% of all species on Earth. 10% of every living thing that exists, packed into a single interconnected web of life so intricate, so layered, so impossibly tangled that scientists have spent entire careers studying single square kilometers of it, and still find new species, new relationships, new mysteries that challenge everything they thought they understood. This is the world the Harpy Eagle was born into. And this is the world it conquered. But let us be precise about what conquering the Amazon rainforest actually means. Because the word conquest implies a straightforward battle between strength and resistance. And the reality of surviving, let alone thriving, as an apex predator in the Amazon is infinitely more complicated than any simple contest of raw power. The Amazon is not one environment. It is dozens of environments stacked on top of each other, each with its own rules, its own challenges, its own cast of creatures locked in perpetual competition for survival. At the very bottom, beneath the great root systems of the ancient trees, is the forest floor. A dim, humid world of decomposing leaves and fungi, where light barely penetrates, and the air is thick with moisture and the smell of earth and decay. Above that is the understory, a shadowy realm of juvenile trees and large-leafed plants reaching desperately upward toward any scrap of sunlight that filters through the canopy above. Then comes the canopy itself, that dense, interlocking ceiling of branches and leaves that captures the majority of the sunlight that strikes the forest, creating a relatively bright, active world of flowers, fruits, insects, and the many animals that have evolved to exploit this sunlit layer. And finally, breaking through the canopy in scattered, towering columns, are the emergent trees, the giants of the forest, whose crowns rise above everything else and are exposed to the full force of tropical sun and wind. Each of these layers presents different challenges and opportunities. Each demands different physical adaptations, different behavioral strategies, different ways of moving, sensing, and surviving. And the Harpy Eagle, in one of the most remarkable achievements of evolutionary engineering that nature has ever produced, has found a way to operate effectively across all of them. It nests in the emergent trees, those towering giants that rise above the canopy. It hunts in the canopy and the understory below. It monitors prey behavior by listening to sounds that travel up from the forest floor. It is, in the truest sense of the word, a master of the entire vertical dimension of the rainforest ecosystem. No other predator in this environment can make that claim. But before we can understand how the Harpy Eagle does all of this, we need to begin at the beginning. We need to start with the physical reality of this bird. Because when you first encounter a Harpy Eagle up close, whether in photographs, in footage, or in the extraordinarily rare experience of seeing one in the wild, the first thing you feel, before you process any of the details, before your brain has time to catalog the specific features, is a pure, visceral, almost primal sense of power. There is something about this bird that bypasses rational thought and speaks directly to some ancient part of the human brain. Something that says, in terms older than language, that this creature is dangerous. That this creature is at the top. The Harpy Eagle, known to science as Harpia harpyja, is named after the harpies of ancient Greek mythology. Those fearsome, winged spirits that were said to carry the dead to the underworld, to snatch people away in an instant, to move faster than thought and strike with the force of divine punishment. And while the ancient Greeks had obviously never seen a Harpy Eagle, because this bird exists only in the Western Hemisphere, the name feels almost prophetically appropriate. Because if you were a monkey sitting in the canopy of the Amazon rainforest, and you had the misfortune of being selected as the target of a Harpy Eagle's focused, patient, tactical attention, then the description of a creature that snatches you away in an instant and delivers you somewhere from which there is no return would feel uncomfortably accurate. Let us talk about size, because the size of the Harpy Eagle is the first thing that registers, and it is genuinely staggering. Adult female Harpy Eagles, which are significantly larger than males in a phenomenon that biologists call reverse sexual dimorphism, and we will discuss why that is and what it means later. But adult females can reach body lengths of up to 1 meter, measured from the tip of the bill to the end of the tail. They can weigh up to 9 kilograms, and in some exceptionally large individuals, that number can push even beyond that. Their wingspan, when those broad, powerful wings are fully extended, can reach 2 meters from tip to tip. Now, there are other birds of prey in the world with longer wingspans. The Andean condor, for example, which also soars over parts of South America, has a wingspan that can exceed 3 meters. But the condor is a scavenger, a bird built for effortless soaring on thermal columns of rising air, not for the explosive, precise, powered hunting that the Harpy Eagle performs. When you compare the Harpy Eagle to other true hunting raptors, other birds that actively pursue, catch, and kill large, agile, intelligent prey, the Harpy Eagle stands in a category essentially by itself. The males, while smaller than the females, are still substantial birds. A male Harpy Eagle might weigh somewhere between 4 and 5 kilograms, which still makes it one of the largest hunting raptors on the planet. But it is the females that truly embody the full physical power of this species. And when you see a female Harpy Eagle spread her wings, when you see the full breadth of that 2-meter span of dark, powerful feathers, you understand immediately that this is an animal at the absolute apex of its world. But raw size, as impressive as it is only the beginning of the story. Because what makes the Harpy Eagle truly extraordinary is not how big it is, but what it does with that size. How every millimeter of that body has been shaped by evolution into a perfectly integrated hunting machine. How each adaptation connects to and amplifies every other adaptation. How the whole is so much greater than the sum of its parts. To really understand this, we need to go deeper. We need to look at each of the major systems that make this bird what it is, and we need to understand not just what those systems are, but why they work the way they do, and how they came to be. Let us start with what is arguably the most immediately impressive physical feature of the Harpy Eagle. The one that, once you have seen it, you cannot stop thinking about. The talons. The talons of the Harpy Eagle are, quite simply, among the most lethal natural weapons that evolution has ever produced. They are not the largest claws in the animal kingdom. A grizzly bear has longer claws. A cassowary has claws that can disembowel a human being. But in terms of the combination of size, strength, speed of deployment, and the specific mechanical genius of how they work, the talons of the Harpy Eagle represent a pinnacle of evolutionary weapon design that is difficult to overstate. The rear talons, those are the hallux claws, the ones that do the primary killing work, can reach lengths of up to 13 centimeters. 13 centimeters. Hold your hand up and look at your fingers. From the base of your palm to the tip of your middle finger is probably somewhere around 18 or 19 centimeters for an average adult. The talon on the back toe of a harpy eagle is 13 centimeters long. That is a curved, razor-sharp spike of keratin and bone roughly equivalent in length to your longest finger, and attached to a leg of extraordinary muscular power. Now imagine that talon, curved like a fishing hook, driving into your body at the speed of a striking predator, and then locking in place with a force exceeding 50 kilograms of pressure. 50 kilograms? That is like someone placing a 50-kilogram weight directly on a single point, a point that happens to be a curved, penetrating spike. This is what it is like to be prey for a harpy eagle. But here is where the engineering becomes truly fascinating. Because the raw numbers, impressive as they are, do not capture the most ingenious aspect of how the harpy eagle's feet work. To understand that, you need to look at the anatomy of the leg itself. At the specific arrangement of tendons and bones that allow this bird to do something that, from an engineering perspective, is genuinely remarkable. Something that has led biologists to describe the leg anatomy as functioning like a mechanical hydraulic lock. Consider the challenge that a large bird of prey faces when it catches a struggling, powerful animal. A harpy eagle targeting a large monkey, for example, is attempting to seize and control an animal that might weigh close to 10 kilograms. That is a significant weight. That is an animal with its own powerful limbs, its own grip, its own desperate, frantic energy as it fights for its life. For the eagle to maintain control of this struggling prey, it needs to exert constant, massive gripping force with its feet. And here is the mechanical problem. Maintaining that kind of force requires muscular effort. And muscular effort requires energy. And energy is a finite resource. So how does the harpy eagle hold on to a violently struggling prey item, sometimes for extended periods, without exhausting itself? The answer lies in the extraordinary anatomical design of the harpy eagle's leg. The tendons that control the closing of the toes run over the back of the leg, over a series of ridged bony projections, in such a way that when the leg is bent, as it is when the eagle is carrying prey, the grip of the talons is mechanically locked. It is not maintained by continuous muscular contraction. It is maintained by the geometry of the limb itself. The weight of the prey actually helps to maintain the grip, because gravity pulling on the prey load increases the mechanical advantage of the locking mechanism. The eagle can, in a very real sense, carry heavy prey with its feet locked closed without dedicating significant muscular energy to maintaining that grip. This is a design principle that human engineers rediscovered and applied in the development of certain types of locking grippers and clamping mechanisms. The idea that a grip can be made more secure by the load it is carrying, that the force required to maintain a hold can be minimized by clever mechanical arrangement rather than brute continuous force, is a genuinely sophisticated engineering concept. And the harpy eagle evolved it independently, driven by the relentless pressure of natural selection operating over millions of years, in the crucible of a rainforest where the difference between catching a prey item and losing it meant the difference between survival and starvation. This anatomical locking mechanism has several important consequences for the harpy eagle's hunting behavior. First, it means that once the eagle has secured a grip on prey, it is extraordinarily difficult for that prey to break free. The harder the prey struggles, in some respects, the more secure the grip becomes. This is a nightmare scenario for any animal that finds itself in the eagle's feet. Second, it means that the eagle can carry prey items of remarkable weight over considerable distances without depleting its own energy reserves at a rate that would make such transport uneconomical. Harpy eagles have been observed carrying prey items that approach their own body weight. For a female harpy eagle weighing, say, 7 or 8 kilograms, that means carrying a monkey or a large sloth weighing 5, 6, or even 7 kilograms through the canopy. The mechanical locking of the grip is what makes this energetically feasible. Third, and this is perhaps the most important consequence for understanding the eagle's lethality as a predator, the gripping force that the locked foot can apply is not limited by muscular fatigue. In the critical moments when the talon strike first connects with prey, the eagle's leg muscles contract with explosive force, driving the talons home and initiating the locking mechanism. From that point on, the grip is maintained mechanically. The muscles can then be devoted to other tasks, like controlling flight, maintaining balance, or deploying the other foot if additional force is needed. The efficiency of this system is remarkable. It is the difference between a hand-operated vise and a ratcheting locking clamp. Both can hold something securely, but one requires constant human effort, while the other holds by mechanical design. Now, let us think about the experience of being struck by those talons. When the Harpy Eagle makes a strike, it is not simply a matter of the bird landing on its prey. The strike is a precisely calculated, explosive deployment of those locking mechanisms, delivered at high speed. The eagle approaches its prey at significant velocity, and in the final moments before contact, it swings its feet forward, driving those curved, 13-centimeter rear talons into the prey's body. The force of the impact, combined with the immediate locking grip and the penetrating shape of the talons, means that the strike is almost always instantly incapacitating if it connects with a vital area. The talons can crush through the skull of a large monkey. They can pierce the spine of a sloth. They can penetrate the body cavity of a large lizard or a small deer-like mammal. The crushing force exceeding 50 kilograms means that even if the initial penetration does not immediately disable the prey, the sustained pressure of the locked grip quickly does. Scientists studying Harpy Eagle hunting behavior have noted something particularly interesting about how the eagle delivers the killing blow. When striking prey in dense vegetation, where precise visual targeting of specific body regions might be difficult, the eagle often strikes with both feet simultaneously, or in very rapid succession, targeting the head and the thorax of the prey animal. A strike to the head with those rear talons at that force level is almost certainly instantly fatal. The crushing pressure applied to the skull and brain stem is simply too great for any mammalian nervous system to survive. It is quick. It is total. And it is a mercy, in a biological sense, if we can apply such a concept, compared to many other predatory killing methods in the natural world. But the talons are only part of the story of the Harpy Eagle's deadly arsenal. The beak, while perhaps less immediately dramatic, plays an important role both in the final killing of prey and in the processing of prey for consumption. The Harpy Eagle's beak is massive, deeply hooked, and extraordinarily powerful. It is designed to tear through hide, muscle, and bone with efficiency. Once prey has been secured by the feet and rendered helpless or dead, the beak takes over the work of processing the carcass, opening it up and extracting the nutritious organs and muscle tissue that the eagle requires. There is also the matter of the eagle's legs themselves, separate from the feet and talons. The legs of the Harpy Eagle are covered in scaled, armored skin rather than feathers, which provides protection against the bites, scratches, and struggles of prey. A large monkey, desperately fighting for its life, might bite and scratch at whatever it can reach. The scaled, tough skin of the Harpy Eagle's legs provides a degree of armor against this. It is not impenetrable, and eagles do occasionally sustain injuries from struggling prey, but the armoring significantly reduces the risk of serious injury during a hunt. The legs themselves are also remarkably thick and muscular, even by raptor standards. When you look at a Harpy Eagle's legs, they do not look like the legs of a bird. They look, bizarrely, more like the legs of a large mammal, thick columns of muscle and bone covered in that distinctive armor scaling. And this visual impression is backed up by the reality of what those legs can do. The muscles that drive the initial strike, that explosive first contraction that drives the talons home, are among the most powerful, relative to body size, of any bird species that has been studied. The power-to-weight ratio of the Harpy Eagle's leg musculature is extraordinary. When we combine all of these elements, the 13-centimeter talons, the 50-kilogram-plus gripping force, the mechanical locking system that maintains that force without exhausting muscular energy, the armored legs, the powerful strike muscles, and the heavy, tearing beak, we get a picture of a predatory killing system that has been refined by evolution to a degree of perfection that is genuinely humbling. Every element works together. Every adaptation reinforces every other adaptation. And the result is a weapon system that operates in the dense, complex, three-dimensional environment of the rainforest canopy with a lethality that no other predator in that environment can match. But a weapon, however perfect, is useless if it cannot be brought to bear on its target. And this brings us to the second extraordinary system that defines the Harpy Eagle. The system that allows it to move through the most complex aerial environment on Earth with a speed, precision, and agility that seems impossible for a bird of its size. The aerodynamic system. The wings, the tail, the body shape, and the flight mechanics that allowed this 9-kilogram bird to navigate a rainforest canopy at 80 kilometers per hour. The first thing you notice, when you look at a Harpy Eagle's wings in the context of its body size, is that they seem short. Compared to what you might expect from a bird that weighs up to 9 kilograms, the wings look almost undersized. And this apparent paradox, this seeming mismatch between the bird's mass and the span of its wings, is actually the key to everything. Because those wings are not short by accident. They are short by design. They are one of the most precisely engineered aerodynamic compromises that evolution has ever struck. Let us think about what different birds use their wings for, and what different wing shapes are optimized for. The albatross has extremely long, narrow wings that are perfect for soaring over the open ocean, catching wind energy and converting it into lift with almost no muscular effort, gliding for thousands of kilometers without flapping. Those wings are terrible for maneuvering in tight spaces. An albatross in a dense forest would be utterly helpless, crashing into branches, unable to turn, unable to accelerate quickly. The wings that make it a master of the open ocean would make it helpless in a forest. At the other extreme, you have small forest birds, wrens and thrushes and similar species, that have short, rounded wings that are excellent for rapid, agile maneuvering through dense vegetation. They can dart through gaps between branches, turn on a dime, accelerate from perch to perch with explosive bursts of energy. But those wings cannot sustain long-distance soaring flight. They require constant muscular effort to maintain altitude, and they cannot carry the bird efficiently over great distances. The Harpy Eagle sits at a specific point on this spectrum, a point that has been precisely defined by the demands of its lifestyle. It needs to be able to move through the dense canopy of the rainforest, threading between branches and vines, making rapid direction changes, accelerating suddenly to match the movements of an evading prey animal. But it also needs to be large and powerful enough to capture and carry prey of significant size. These two demands pull in opposite directions. And the compromise that evolution has struck is the short, broad wing of the Harpy Eagle. Short wings reduce the overall wingspan, which means the eagle can fit through gaps in the vegetation that a bird with longer wings could never negotiate. Broad wings maintain sufficient wing area to generate the lift needed to support a heavy bird, and to provide the aerodynamic force needed for rapid acceleration and maneuvering. The specific ratio of wing length to wing breadth in the Harpy Eagle has been shaped by millions of years of selection pressure to hit the sweet spot between maneuverability and load-carrying capacity in the specific context of the rainforest canopy. But the wings alone are not enough to explain the Harpy Eagle's extraordinary maneuverability. To understand the full picture, you need to look at the tail. And the Harpy Eagle's tail is not merely a tail. It is a sophisticated aerodynamic control surface that serves the same function as the tail fin and rudder of an aircraft, but with a degree of real-time, dynamic control that no human-engineered aircraft has ever achieved. The tail of the Harpy Eagle is notably long relative to its body, and broadly banded in alternating bars of dark and light. But more important than its visual appearance is its functional role in flight. The tail provides several key aerodynamic functions simultaneously. It generates lift, adding to the lift produced by the wings and allowing the eagle to maintain flight at slower speeds than would otherwise be possible for a bird of its mass, which is important for hunting in the dense, enclosed spaces of the canopy where high-speed straight-line flight is impossible. It provides directional control, allowing the eagle to steer through complex, three-dimensional obstacle courses with precision that defies intuition. And it acts as an air brake, helping the eagle to rapidly decelerate when it needs to make a sharp turn or when it is approaching a perch or a prey item at speed. The control of the tail is achieved through a complex set of muscles and tendons that allow the eagle to spread, compress, twist, and angle the tail feathers in real time as it flies. This gives the eagle a degree of control over its flight path that is remarkable. It can, in effect, steer itself through a gap in the vegetation by making dozens of tiny adjustments to the angle and spread of its tail, each adjustment responding to the visual information coming in through its extraordinary eyes, which we will discuss at length shortly. The tail and the visual system form a feedback loop that allows the eagle to navigate through the canopy at speeds that seem reckless but are, in reality, precisely controlled. To fully appreciate how extraordinary the Harpy Eagle's canopy navigation abilities are, it helps to think about the physical challenge it faces. The canopy of a mature Amazonian rainforest is not like a park or a managed woodland. It is a three-dimensional labyrinth. The branches of dozens of different tree species interlock, overlap, and intersect at every conceivable angle. Vines and lianas loop and drape between trees, creating additional obstacles at unpredictable heights and angles. Dead branches jut out at random angles. Clumps of epiphytic plants, bromeliads and orchids and ferns, grow on branches and add to the visual and physical complexity of the environment. And through this labyrinth, a harpy eagle pursuing a fleeing monkey can reach speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour. 80 kilometers per hour. Consider what that means in practical terms. At 80 kilometers per hour, the eagle is covering approximately 22 meters per second. In the dense canopy of the rainforest, 22 meters per second is almost incomprehensibly fast. The reaction time required to navigate through the canopy at that speed, to see an obstacle, process its position and dimensions, decide on a course correction, execute that correction with the wings and tail, and have the body actually move in the corrected direction, all before hitting the obstacle, is measured in milliseconds. The eagle's nervous system, its visual processing speed, its motor response times, all have to operate at a level of performance that is at the absolute limit of what biological systems are capable of. And yet harpy eagles do it routinely. They thread through the canopy at high speed in pursuit of fleeing prey, making course corrections that seem impossible for a bird of their size, ducking under branches, banking around tree trunks, folding their wings briefly to slip through gaps that seem too narrow, and then snapping them open again to maintain flight. The aerodynamic control surface of that long tail is making continuous micro-adjustments throughout every second of this pursuit, working in concert with the wings to maintain stable, directed flight through an environment that would defeat any simpler aerodynamic system. There is also the matter of takeoff and landing, which in the dense rainforests present their own unique challenges. Most large birds of prey require open space to achieve flight. They need a runway, in effect, a stretch of open air in which to build up speed and generate the lift needed to become airborne. The harpy eagle has evolved a solution to the problem of taking off from a perch deep within the dense canopy, where open space may be very limited. It can perform what researchers have described as vertical takeoffs, using explosive muscular effort to leap from its perch and immediately begin generating lift with rapid, powerful wing beats. This allows it to become airborne in extremely confined spaces, quickly reaching the speed needed for the wings to generate sufficient lift, and then transitioning to the more efficient, less muscularly demanding flight regime of gliding and soaring. This vertical takeoff capability is not unique to the harpy eagle, but the combination of it with the ability to then immediately begin maneuvering at high speed through dense vegetation, in a bird of this size and weight, is genuinely remarkable. It is the aeronautical equivalent of a heavy transport aircraft with the takeoff and maneuvering characteristics of a fighter jet. It should not be possible. And yet evolution, working through the relentless, unforgiving mechanism of natural selection across millions of generations, found a way to make it not just possible but routine. The feathers themselves, the actual structural elements of the wings and tail, also deserve attention. The primary flight feathers of the harpy eagle are large, stiff, and precisely shaped to manage airflow. The leading edge of the wing produces a specific airflow pattern that reduces turbulence and maintains laminar flow over the wing surface, maximizing lift and minimizing drag. The trailing edge feathers are shaped to control how air leaves the wing, further optimizing the aerodynamic efficiency of each wing stroke. Owls have evolved a specialized feather structure with comb-like leading edges that break up the turbulence of flight into smaller vortices, dramatically reducing the sound of their flight so they can hunt in silence. The harpy eagle, which does not hunt primarily by sound or need the stealth of silent flight in the same way, has not evolved this specific feature. But it has its own set of feather specializations that optimize its wings for the explosive, precise, high-speed maneuvering that defines its hunting style. The body shape of the Harpy Eagle also contributes to its aerodynamic performance. The chest is deep and powerfully muscled, housing the massive pectoral muscles that drive the wings. The body is compact and streamlined, not unnecessarily broad or wide, which would increase drag. The head, with its distinctive facial disc that we will discuss shortly, is positioned at the front of the body on a relatively short neck, which keeps the center of gravity close to the wings and contributes to flight stability. Everything about the eagle's physical form has been shaped to facilitate the specific type of flight performance that hunting in the rainforest canopy demands. One more aspect of the Harpy Eagle's aerodynamic capability that deserves special mention is its ability to use the structure of the forest itself as an advantage during hunting. In the open sky, a bird of prey pursuing another flying bird is limited by the aerodynamic capabilities of its own wings. But in the forest canopy, the environment itself becomes a factor. A pursuing eagle can use the structure of the forest to cut off the escape routes of prey. It can angle its pursuit to drive a monkey toward a part of the canopy where the branches are denser and the monkey's own movement options are more limited. It can use the blind spots created by branches and trunks to approach prey from angles where it is not immediately visible. And it can use its superior maneuverability, relative to the prey's movement through branches rather than through air, to overtake prey that might initially seem to be escaping. This three-dimensional tactical use of the forest environment during a hunt is something we will return to in much more detail when we discuss the Harpy Eagle's hunting behavior. But the aerodynamic capability is the foundation of it all. You cannot apply sophisticated spatial tactics in a forest canopy if you cannot actually fly through that canopy with the speed and precision needed. The wing and tail design of the Harpy Eagle is the prerequisite for everything else. Now we come to perhaps the most intellectually fascinating of all the Harpy Eagle's adaptations: the sensory systems. The ways in which this bird gathers information about its environment, detects prey, tracks moving targets, and builds the precise picture of its world that allows it to make the split-second decisions that successful hunting in the rainforest demands. Because a hunting tool, however perfect, is only as good as the targeting system that aims it. And the Harpy Eagle has targeting systems that are, in their way, as extraordinary as anything else about this bird. Let us begin with vision, because the Harpy Eagle's eyes are among the most sophisticated visual organs in the animal kingdom, and understanding them requires understanding some fundamental concepts about how eyes work and what visual acuity actually means in a biological context. The first thing to understand is that the eyes of birds of prey are not simply better versions of human eyes. They are different in several fundamental ways that go beyond mere acuity or resolution. The eyes of a Harpy Eagle are, relative to the size of the bird's head, extraordinarily large. Much larger, proportionally, than human eyes. If you could scale up a human eye to the same proportion relative to head size as a Harpy Eagle's eye, it would be the size of a grapefruit. This enormous size serves a critical function. Larger eyes can accommodate larger lenses. Larger lenses can gather more light, and more light means better vision in dim conditions. This matters enormously in the rainforest, where light levels in the canopy and understory are often significantly lower than in open environments. The dense canopy overhead filters out a large proportion of the sunlight that strikes it, creating a dimmer, more diffuse light environment below. An eagle hunting in the canopy and understory of a mature rainforest needs to be able to see clearly in light conditions that would seriously degrade the vision of an animal with smaller eyes. The large eyes of the Harpy Eagle are partly an adaptation to this low-light hunting environment. But the size of the eyes is only the beginning. The structure of the eyes introduces the concept that is truly at the heart of the Harpy Eagle's visual capability: the concept of the fovea. In the human eye, there is a small region at the center of the retina called the fovea centralis, which is the area of highest visual acuity. The fovea is packed with a high density of cone cells, the photoreceptors responsible for color vision and fine detail, and the neural wiring of the human visual system is arranged so that the fovea gets the most processing power. When you look directly at something, you are pointing your fovea at it, and you are seeing that thing in the highest detail your visual system is capable of. The harpy eagle, and birds of prey generally, have taken this concept and expanded it in a way that is genuinely ingenious. Harpy eagles have not one fovea but two, in each eye. Two distinct regions of the retina with exceptionally high photoreceptor density, each specialized for a different aspect of vision. The first fovea, sometimes called the temporal fovea because of its position in the eye, is oriented so that it is used for forward vision. This is the fovea that the eagle uses when it is looking directly ahead, when it is focusing on a distant target across an open space, or when it is staring intently at something it has identified as a potential prey item from a distance. This fovea is specialized for maximum acuity at long range, for picking out fine details at distances that would be completely beyond the resolving power of a human eye. The visual acuity of this primary, long-range fovea in a harpy eagle is estimated to be somewhere between 2 and 8 times greater than the best human visual acuity. What this means in practical terms is extraordinary. A harpy eagle can resolve detail at a distance that would require a human observer to be 2 to 8 times closer to see the same detail. It can spot a small animal, a monkey sitting motionless in the branches and relying on camouflage for concealment, from a distance at which that monkey would be completely invisible to a human observer, just a vague blur lost in the visual noise of leaves and branches and shifting light. But there is a problem with using a single forward-facing fovea for hunting in the canopy. When the eagle is in motion, when it is flying at 80 km per hour through the canopy in pursuit of a fleeing monkey, the visual demands are completely different from the demands of scanning for prey from a stationary perch. In flight, the prey is not a stationary point that can be tracked by keeping the fovea pointed steadily at it. The prey is a moving target, and the eagle is also moving, and the background of branches and leaves is rushing past at high speed, and the prey's position relative to the eagle is changing with every fraction of a second. Tracking a small, fast-moving target against a complex, rapidly changing background is a completely different visual challenge from resolving fine detail in a stationary scene. This is where the second fovea comes in. The second fovea, positioned differently in the eye from the first, is specialized for tracking moving objects. It has a different structure, tuned for detecting motion and maintaining a lock on a moving target even as the background changes rapidly. When the eagle transitions from perch hunting to active pursuit, its visual system effectively switches primary reliance from the long-range, detail-resolving temporal fovea to this motion-tracking fovea, which maintains a lock on the fleeing prey animal through all the visual chaos of the forest canopy. The existence of two distinct foveae in each eye, serving different visual functions and usable in different hunting contexts, is one of the most sophisticated adaptations in any sensory system in the animal kingdom. It is, effectively, as though the eagle has two different camera systems in each eye, each optimized for a different type of photography, and the ability to switch between them depending on the current task. No human camera system, however sophisticated, can do this automatically and in real time based on the demands of the moment. The eyes are also structured in a way that gives the harpy eagle an extraordinarily wide field of view. The position and orientation of the eyes and the skull provides a wide total field of view, which is important for detecting threats and opportunities in the peripheral environment. At the same time, there is a substantial region of binocular overlap in the forward field of vision, where the visual fields of both eyes overlap and the brain can combine the two images to extract depth information through binocular stereopsis. This binocular region is critical for the precise depth perception that the eagle needs to judge distances accurately during a strike. When those talons need to connect with a prey animal at precisely the right moment and with precisely the right trajectory, the eagle's brain needs to have an accurate, real-time estimate of exactly how far away that prey animal is. The binocular overlap zone provides this through exactly the same mechanism that humans use for depth perception, but with greater precision because of the higher resolution of the underlying images. There is another structural feature of the harpy eagle's eyes that is worth discussing: the description of them as tube-shaped. Human eyes are roughly spherical. The eyes of most birds are also roughly spherical, though somewhat flattened. But the eyes of birds of prey, and particularly the larger, more visually demanding species like the harpy eagle, tend to be somewhat elongated in the front-to-back dimension, more like a short tube or cylinder than a sphere. This tubular shape serves an important optical function. By elongating the eye, the bird increases the distance between the lens at the front and the retina at the back. A longer distance between lens and retina, with the same size lens, means a larger image projected onto the retina. A larger image means more photoreceptors are stimulated by any given object in the scene, which means more visual information is available for processing, which means higher effective visual acuity. This is the same optical principle that underlies the design of telescopes and telephoto camera lenses. Increasing the focal length of the optical system, the distance between the lens and the image plane, increases the magnification and therefore the angular resolution of the system. The Harpy Eagle's eye is, in essence, a biological telephoto lens. The tubular shape increases the effective focal length, giving the eagle greater angular resolution than would be possible with a spherical eye of the same size. It is a compact, lightweight optical engineering solution to the problem of needing high-resolution vision in a small, airborne predator. The color vision of the Harpy Eagle is also worth mentioning, though it is less well understood than the structural aspects of the eye. It is known that birds generally have 4 types of color receptors, compared to the 3 types in human eyes, and that many birds can see into the ultraviolet part of the spectrum, which is invisible to humans. The functional implications of this extended color vision for hunting behavior in the rainforest are not fully understood, but it is reasonable to infer that the ability to see in ultraviolet might help the eagle to detect markings or signals on prey animals that are invisible to human observers, or to better distinguish camouflaged prey from the background vegetation in ways that exploit differences in ultraviolet reflectivity. But vision, extraordinary as it is only one of the Harpy Eagle's sensory tools. Because deep in the canopy and understory of the rainforest, vision alone is not always sufficient. The dense vegetation creates visual blind spots. Prey animals hide behind leaves and branches. The thick, layered structure of the forest means that sounds from one level can travel to another level, providing information about activity happening out of direct line of sight. And to exploit this acoustic information, the Harpy Eagle has evolved a sensory tool that connects it to one of its most visually striking physical features: the facial disc. The facial disc of the Harpy Eagle is one of the first things you notice about the bird's face, even before you process the fierce, golden eyes. It is a ruff of shorter, stiffer feathers arranged in a roughly circular or oval pattern around the face, framing the eyes, the beak, and the surrounding facial area. It gives the eagle a distinctive, almost owl-like appearance, and many observers find it one of the most arresting features of the bird's face. But its function is not aesthetic. It is acoustic. The facial disc of the Harpy Eagle works on exactly the same principle as a satellite dish, or a parabolic microphone, or the curved dish of an old-fashioned ear trumpet. The disc-shaped arrangement of feathers around the face creates a parabolic reflector for sound waves. Sound arriving from the environment is reflected by the disc and focused toward the ear openings on either side of the head, which are positioned behind the disc. This focusing effect concentrates the sound energy arriving at the ear from a specific direction, amplifying the perceived loudness of sounds coming from that direction while attenuating sounds from other directions. The practical effect is that the eagle can hear sounds from a specific direction, particularly sounds from below the canopy level, coming up from the understory and forest floor, with significantly greater sensitivity than would be possible without the facial disc. Faint rustles. The movement of a sloth through branches. The shuffling of a porcupine on a branch. The alarm calls of smaller birds that have detected a predator on the forest floor. These sounds, too faint to be useful to a bird without this acoustic focusing system, become detectable and directionally useful to the Harpy Eagle because of the facial disc. This acoustic capability is particularly important given a specific aspect of the Harpy Eagle's hunting behavior. The eagle often hunts from a perch, sitting motionless in a position where it can see and hear a broad swath of canopy and understory below. In this sit-and-wait hunting strategy, which we will discuss in much more detail when we examine hunting behavior, the eagle relies on its sensory systems to detect prey that is not yet visible. A sound from below, focusing through the disc to the ears, might trigger the eagle to orient its head toward the source of the sound, bringing its powerful eyes to bear in that direction and scanning for visual confirmation of what its ears have already suggested might be there. The combination of the acoustic focusing of the facial disc and the extraordinary visual resolution of those tube-shaped, double-fovea eyes creates a sensory system of remarkable range and sensitivity. The eagle can detect the faint acoustic signature of prey animals moving through the understory at distances where those animals are not yet visible, orient toward the sound source with its eyes, and then use its visual system to resolve the fine details needed to confirm the prey's presence and plan an approach. This multisensory target acquisition system, with acoustic detection feeding into visual confirmation, is one of the things that makes the harpy eagle such an effective hunter in an environment where many prey species rely on camouflage and stillness as their primary defenses. It is worth noting that the harpy eagle's facial disc, while functionally similar to the facial discs of owls, has evolved independently. The common ancestor of eagles and owls did not have a facial disc. The feature evolved separately in these two lineages, driven by the shared need for acoustic focusing in forest environments where prey detection relies partly on sound. This is an example of convergent evolution, one of nature's most beautiful and intellectually satisfying phenomena, where completely unrelated lineages arrive at the same solution to the same problem through independent evolutionary pathways. It tells us something profound about the nature of the problem that both the eagle and the owl were trying to solve. The problem of detecting prey by sound in a visually complex, acoustically rich environment is so universal and so demanding that it drove two completely separate lineages to independently invent the same solution. The hearing system of the harpy eagle works in conjunction with a neural feature that birds of prey generally possess to a remarkable degree. The ability to rapidly process and integrate sensory information from multiple sources and to translate that integrated information into precise motor commands with minimal delay. The neural pathway from the ear to the part of the brain that processes auditory information, and from there to the parts of the brain that control head and eye movement, is extremely fast in raptors. This is critical because in the hunting context, every millisecond of processing delay translates into a degree of error in the targeting system. The prey is moving. The environment is changing. The eagle itself may be moving. A slow sensory-to-motor loop would mean that by the time the eagle responds to a sound, the prey has moved enough to throw off the targeting calculation. The fast neural processing of the harpy eagle minimizes this lag, ensuring that the response to sensory input is as close to instantaneous as biology permits. Now, as we move forward in our exploration of this extraordinary bird, it is important to step back for a moment and appreciate the integration of these systems. The talons, the legs, the aerodynamic body, the eyes, the facial disc, the hearing. They are not separate adaptations that happen to coexist in the same animal. They are parts of a deeply integrated system, each component tuned to work with all the others, each amplifying the effectiveness of every other component. Consider a hunting scenario. The eagle is perched motionless in the canopy. Its disc is oriented forward and slightly downward, maximizing the capture of sounds from the understory below. A monkey troop is moving through the branches 60 meters away. The sounds of the monkey's movement, faint at that distance, are focused by the disc and detected by the ears. The neural system instantly and automatically orients the head toward the sound source. The eyes, now pointing in the direction of the detected sound, begin scanning with the long-range temporal fovea. The eagle's visual system, resolving detail at a resolution many times greater than human vision, picks out the movement of leaves and branches that the monkey's passage is causing. Then, through a gap in the foliage, for just a fraction of a second, the eagle gets a direct view of one of the monkeys. The double-fovea captures every detail of its posture, its position, its state of alertness. The eagle begins assessing. Is this monkey a good target? How alert is the troop? Is there a better individual, less aware, positioned in a place that would allow a more direct approach? All of this assessment is happening in real time, continuously updated as the eagle gathers more information. The sensory systems are feeding a constant stream of data to the brain. The brain is processing that data, building a model of the situation, running predictions about how the situation might develop, evaluating the options for action. And then, when the decision is made to hunt, all of those systems flip from assessment mode to action mode. The wings unfold. The legs tuck up to reduce drag. The eyes switch to tracking mode, the motion tracking fovea taking over from the detail resolution fovea. The body accelerates, threading through the canopy at increasing speed, the tail making dozens of tiny adjustments per second to thread the precise course through the obstacle course of branches and vines. And the feet, those extraordinary mechanical weapons with their 13-centimeter talons, are being pulled back into the strike position, ready to deploy at the moment of contact. The entire sequence, from initial acoustic detection to final strike, involves every one of the systems we have described, each playing its specific role at its specific moment, each contributing to the overall effectiveness of the hunting system. Remove any one of these components, and the system degrades dramatically. The acoustic focusing of the disc makes detection faster and more reliable. The visual acuity makes assessment possible at safe distances. The aerodynamic body makes the approach fast enough to prevent the prey from escaping. The talons make the strike lethal and the grip unbreakable. Each component is necessary. Each is sufficient to its specific task. And together they create a system that has made the Harpy Eagle the undisputed apex predator of the most complex and competitive ecosystem on Earth. Let us now begin to think about the prey that all of this extraordinary equipment is directed against. Because to understand the full measure of what the Harpy Eagle achieves as a predator, you need to understand what it is hunting. And the prey of the Harpy Eagle is not small, helpless, or stupid. The primary prey of the Harpy Eagle includes some of the largest, most intelligent, most agile, and most socially sophisticated animals in the rainforest. Howler monkeys, spider monkeys, and capuchin monkeys are among the most important prey species. Sloths, both two-toed and three-toed, are another major prey group. Large lizards, snakes, smaller prey including possums, large rodents like agoutis, and occasionally even small deer-like mammals like brocket deer. The eagle is an opportunistic predator in the sense that it will take a range of prey species, but its primary hunting focus is on the large mammals of the canopy, particularly the monkeys and sloths that represent the most nutritionally substantial prey items. Monkeys, in particular, present a formidable challenge as prey. They are intelligent. They form social groups that provide many eyes, ears, and warning calls watching for predators. They are agile in 3 dimensions, capable of moving through the canopy with remarkable speed and dexterity. They have hands that can grip and feet that can grasp, making them difficult to dislodge from a branch even when seized. And they have communication systems, those complex vocalizations that convey information about predator type, predator distance, and predator behavior, that allow the whole group to respond to a threat in a coordinated way. Sloths, by contrast, present a completely different kind of challenge. They are not intelligent in the active, problem-solving sense that monkeys are. They do not form social groups that provide mutual protection. But they have their own defenses against predation that are, in their own way, just as formidable. Sloths are cryptic. They are slow-moving, and their slowness, counterintuitively, makes them harder to detect. A slowly moving animal does not disturb the vegetation around it the way a rapidly moving one does. There is no shaking of branches, no scattering of leaves, no visual motion signature that a predator can use for detection. Sloths also have a specialized algae that grows in their fur, giving it a greenish tinge that provides camouflage against the green background of the forest. And they hang motionless for extended periods, relying on their stillness and camouflage to make them invisible to predators. A Harpy Eagle hunting sloths needs to use a completely different set of strategies from those used to hunt monkeys. The sloth hunting strategy relies much more heavily on the acoustic and visual detection of subtle, faint cues. The slight sound of a sloth shifting its grip. The brief visual break in the camouflage as the light angle changes. The particular way that the branch is weighted down by the sloth's body. These are the kinds of subtle signals that the eagle's extraordinary sensory systems are tuned to detect, and that make the difference between finding a camouflaged sloth and missing it entirely. The fact that the Harpy Eagle hunts both of these very different prey types, using what must be significantly different strategies for each, is itself testament to the behavioral flexibility and intelligence of this bird. It is not a specialist in the narrow sense, locked into a single prey type and a single hunting strategy. It is a generalist apex predator with the physical and cognitive resources to adapt its hunting approach to the specific demands of different prey species, different environmental conditions, and different situations as they arise. This flexibility is something we will explore in much greater depth when we discuss hunting behavior in detail, including the remarkable research on Barrow, Colorado Island that revealed some of the most sophisticated aspects of the Harpy Eagle's behavioral repertoire. But before we get there, we need to spend some time on one more aspect of the eagle's biology that is fundamental to understanding everything else. The aspect of size difference between males and females, the phenomenon of reverse sexual dimorphism, and what it means for the ecology and behavior of this species. Among most species of birds and mammals, when there is a size difference between the sexes, it is the males that are larger. This pattern is driven primarily by sexual selection. Males compete with other males for access to females, and larger, stronger males are more likely to win those competitions. Over evolutionary time, this competition drives the evolution of larger male body size. The pattern is familiar across a huge range of species, from elephants, seals to gorillas to elk, and it extends into the birds of prey in many species. Male peregrine falcons, male red-tailed hawks, male golden eagles, all are larger than their female counterparts in many raptor species. But in the harpy eagle, and in many other birds of prey, the pattern is reversed. Females are substantially larger than males. A female harpy eagle may be nearly twice the mass of a male from the same pair. And this reversal of the usual pattern, this reverse sexual dimorphism, has been a topic of scientific debate and investigation for decades. Because it requires an explanation. Natural selection does not produce dramatic physical differences between the sexes without a reason. Something, or some combination of things, is driving the evolution of larger female size and smaller male size in these species. And the explanations that have been proposed are fascinating, and they illuminate several important aspects of harpy eagle ecology and behavior. One of the most influential explanations for reverse sexual dimorphism in birds of prey focuses on the division of hunting labor between the sexes during the breeding season. In many raptor species, including the harpy eagle, during the period when the female is incubating eggs and then brooding and guarding the young chick, it falls primarily to the male to hunt and provision the nest. The male must bring food not just for himself but for the female and the chick. This role demands a specific set of hunting characteristics that differ somewhat from the characteristics needed for the rest of the year. A smaller male may be better able to hunt the smaller, faster, more agile prey items that are needed to maintain a steady food supply to the nest. A smaller body requires less food to sustain, meaning the male has a lower baseline energy requirement, and needs to catch less total prey to meet its own needs and still have surplus to bring to the nest. A smaller body may also allow the male to hunt in slightly tighter spaces within the canopy, accessing prey in areas where a larger bird could not easily maneuver. In these ways, smaller male size may be specifically advantageous for the provisioning role that male raptors play during the breeding season. The female, by contrast, needs to be large for different reasons. During incubation, she needs enough body mass to maintain a stable body temperature over the eggs even in the face of environmental temperature fluctuations. She needs enough energy reserves to sustain herself through periods when the male's provisioning is insufficient. She needs to be large enough to defend the nest against potential predators and competitors, including, potentially, against males of her own species. And when she is hunting for herself, outside the breeding season, she can exploit prey size ranges that are not available to the smaller male. A large female harpy eagle can take prey items that a smaller male simply could not overpower. This differential prey exploitation by the two sexes has an interesting ecological consequence. By hunting different size ranges of prey, male and female harpy eagles within a pair reduce the competition between themselves for food resources. They are, in effect, occupying slightly different ecological niches within the same territory, which reduces intraspecific competition and allows the pair to collectively exploit a broader range of prey types than either sex could alone. This ecological partitioning of the prey resource base may be one of the key advantages that pair bonding offers in a species where territories are large and prey density is relatively low. Because harpy eagle territories are large, very large, a pair of harpy eagles may maintain and defend an exclusive territory of somewhere between 25 and 100 square kilometers, depending on the productivity of the habitat and the density of prey within it. That is a territory that could encompass dozens of square kilometers of dense rainforest, an area so vast that the pair might go days without being in the same part of it. Within this enormous territory, the two birds move on somewhat different circuits, hunting in somewhat different areas and targeting somewhat different prey, and then coming together at the nest site during the breeding season when their different roles become most clearly differentiated. The maintenance of such large territories requires significant energy investment in territory defense. Harpy eagles, like many large raptors, defend their territories through a combination of active patrolling and vocalization. The calls of the harpy eagle, which include a variety of screams, wails, and what can only be described as haunting, drawn-out cries, serve as long-distance territorial signals that communicate the presence and identity of the resident pair to any other eagles that might be passing through or considering establishing a territory in the area. These vocalizations carry through the dense canopy over significant distances, providing a cost-effective way of signaling territorial occupation without requiring the resident birds to physically confront every potential intruder. When physical confrontation does occur, between a resident harpy eagle and a challenger of either sex, those confrontations can be spectacular and intense. The large female is a formidable presence in any such confrontation, and her size relative to most other potential challengers means that physical confrontations, while they do occur, are often resolved relatively quickly with the resident bird prevailing. The cost of challenging a resident harpy eagle for its territory is high, and most potential challengers appear to assess this cost accurately and move on rather than pressing an aggressive confrontation. The pair bond in harpy eagles is long-lasting, often persisting for life, or at least for many years. And this long-term pair bond is associated with an investment in a specific nest site that is extraordinary even by the standards of large raptors. Harpy eagles build their nests, called eyries, in the crown of one of the emergent trees, one of those giant trees that rises above the main canopy level. The nest is enormous, a platform of large sticks and branches that can reach 2 meters in diameter and accumulate over years of use in addition to a depth of 1 meter or more. Both members of the pair contribute to nest construction and maintenance, bringing large sticks and branches and weaving them into the existing structure. The selection of the nest tree is critical and appears to be made with care. The emergent tree provides height, which gives the eagles a commanding view of the surrounding canopy, and openness, because the crown of an emergent tree is exposed above the main canopy level and receives full sunlight, which helps to keep the nest dry and reduces the risk of predation on eggs and chicks by arboreal predators that might otherwise approach through the canopy. The specific tree selected is typically one of the largest individuals in the area, with a crown structure that provides a stable, secure platform for the substantial weight of the nest and its occupants. And this brings us to perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the harpy eagle's reproductive strategy: its extraordinary slowness. In a world of predators where reproductive rate is often a key driver of population dynamics, the harpy eagle reproduces with a deliberateness that seems almost reckless. A pair of harpy eagles raises at most 1 chick every 2 to 3 years. The female lays a clutch of 1 to 2 eggs, but if 2 eggs are laid, almost invariably only 1 chick survives, as the first chick to hatch generally outcompetes the second for food. The incubation period lasts approximately 56 days. The chick, after hatching, remains in the nest for anywhere from 5 to 6 months before it is capable of sustained flight. And even after fledging, the young eagle may remain in its parent's territory for another year or more, still partially dependent on the adults for food, as it develops the hunting skills it will need to survive independently. This extraordinarily slow reproductive rate means that the harpy eagle population can only recover very slowly from any losses. If a pair loses their breeding adult, Whether to injury, disease, or human activity, it takes many years before a new pair can establish itself in that territory and begin contributing to the population. There is no capacity for rapid recovery, for producing many offspring in good years to compensate for losses in bad years. The slow, steady, low-volume reproductive strategy of the Harpy Eagle is the opposite of the high-fecundity, boom-and-bust strategies of smaller animals, and it reflects the eagle's position at the top of the food chain, where its own mortality risk from predation is low enough that it can afford to invest heavily in each offspring rather than spreading that investment across many offspring. The slow reproductive rate also means that the population is very sensitive to adult mortality. Every breeding adult that is lost represents not just the loss of that individual's contribution to the gene pool, but the loss of years of future productivity. An adult female Harpy Eagle that lives to breed successfully for 20 years and produces perhaps 7 or 8 fledged chicks over that lifetime is a vastly more valuable reproductive asset to the population than any of those chicks, because the chicks have not yet demonstrated their ability to survive to adulthood and establish their own breeding territories. The loss of a single breeding adult, to whatever cause, has a disproportionately large impact on the population's long-term trajectory. This sensitivity of the population to adult mortality is one of the key reasons why the primary conservation threat to the Harpy Eagle is not a rival predator or a disease, but rather the loss and fragmentation of its rainforest habitat, which we will discuss in much greater detail in the later portions of this documentary. But for now, let us hold that thought and return to the most immediate and fascinating aspects of this bird's daily life. The hunting. The actual business of being the apex predator of the rainforest. The Harpy Eagle hunts primarily during the daylight hours, which in the equatorial rainforest means a roughly 12-hour window from sunrise to sunset. Within this window, the bird's activity follows a pattern shaped by the thermal dynamics of the rainforest, by the behavior of its prey, and by its own energy management strategy. Understanding this daily pattern requires understanding something about how large birds of prey manage energy, because that management is a critical constraint on their behavior. A Harpy Eagle, weighing up to 9 kilograms, has substantial energy requirements. Maintaining body temperature, fueling the muscular work of flight, and providing the raw materials for growth and reproduction all demand a continuous supply of metabolized food energy. But the eagle is not a small bird that can afford to hunt continuously throughout the day, catching many small prey items and eating them on the go. It is a large predator that takes large prey items infrequently, and that needs to manage its energy budget over days and weeks rather than hours. After a successful large kill, a Harpy Eagle may not need to hunt again for several days. A large monkey or sloth provides a significant quantity of meat and fat, and the eagle can consume this over multiple feeding sessions, returning to a cached or partially consumed carcass to feed again. During the period following a large kill, the eagle's hunting activity is low. It rests. It digests. It may spend time at the nest or surveying its territory from a high perch. Only as its energy stores are depleted does the pressure to hunt again increase. This means that the Harpy Eagle is not constantly hunting. It is not spending every waking moment in active pursuit of prey. Much of its time is spent in what appears, to a casual observer, to be simply sitting. Perching motionless in the canopy or on an emergent tree, looking out over its territory with those extraordinary eyes, listening with those disc-focused ears, apparently doing nothing. But this apparent inactivity is deceptive. The eagle is doing a great deal during these perched periods. It is constantly monitoring its sensory environment, building a detailed picture of what is happening in the territory. It is learning the habits and routes of the prey animals that share its territory. It is processing information about which areas of the canopy currently have active monkey troops, where the sloths are likely to be found at this time of day, how alert the various prey groups currently are. This information gathering during the resting periods feeds directly into the hunting decisions that the eagle will make when it does choose to hunt. A Harpy Eagle that has spent several days perching and observing knows which monkey troop has been moving through the southern part of its territory in the early mornings. It knows that there is a large sloth that has been spending time in a particular Cecropia tree for the past several days. It knows that the alarm calls of the smaller birds in a particular area of the canopy indicate that there is prey-rich activity in that area. This accumulated knowledge allows the eagle to hunt with a degree of efficiency and targeting precision that would be impossible without it. It is not simply roaming randomly and hoping to encounter prey. It is a tactical predator making informed decisions based on accumulated environmental knowledge. The hunting itself, when it begins, typically starts with the eagle leaving its perch and moving to a new observation position, often a perch that provides a better view of the area where prey has been detected or predicted to be. From this new perch, the eagle continues its observation, refining its assessment of the situation. This process of moving between observation perches, building a progressively more detailed picture of the prey's situation before committing to an actual strike, is characteristic of how the harpy eagle hunts. The final approach to prey, once the decision to strike has been made, varies significantly depending on the prey type and the specific circumstances. Against a monkey troop that is alert and organized, the approach is typically rapid, explosive, and targeted at a specific individual that has been identified as the most vulnerable. The element of surprise is critical, because an alerted monkey troop that sees the eagle coming has time to scatter, move to cover, and make the coordination of the troop's escape response that makes any individual capture much more difficult. Against a sloth, the approach is typically slower and more deliberate, because the sloth is not going to flee at high speed. The sloth's defense is its camouflage and stillness, and once the eagle has visually located a sloth and committed to the approach, the sloth's only response is to grip the branch as tightly as possible and rely on its remarkable arm strength to resist being pulled free. A sloth hanging from a branch with its extraordinary hook-like claws can exert an enormous gripping force, and the eagle may need to literally pull the sloth free of its grip, which requires significant sustained force. This is where the mechanical locking grip of the harpy eagle's feet becomes critical in a different way than it does with monkey hunting. Against a monkey, the locking grip prevents a strong, agile animal from breaking free of the talon hold through active struggling. Against a sloth, the locking grip allows the eagle to apply sustained, continuous pulling force against the sloth's passive grip on the branch, without the eagle exhausting its own muscular effort in maintaining the grip. The eagle locks its feet onto the sloth and then uses its wings to provide the pulling force, sustained over seconds or even minutes if necessary, until the sloth's grip fails and it can be lifted free. The versatility of the eagle's hunting system, capable of the explosive, split-second strike needed to catch a fleeing monkey, and equally capable of the slow, sustained pull needed to detach a clinging sloth, is another testament to how well integrated and adaptable this predator's toolkit is. It is not a one-trick animal. It has multiple modes of operation, each appropriate to different circumstances, and the ability to select and apply the right mode for the specific situation it faces. Let us now talk about something that has been emerging as a theme throughout this discussion, but that deserves its own explicit treatment. The intelligence of the harpy eagle. Because what we see in the hunting behavior of this bird is not simply the expression of hardwired instinctual programs. There is genuine cognitive complexity here. There is learning, planning, flexibility, and something that researchers have begun to describe as tactical intelligence. The research on Barrow, Colorado Island, a research station island in the middle of a lake created by the damming of the Chagres River in what is now Panama, has provided some of the most detailed and systematic observations of harpy eagle hunting behavior ever collected. Barrow, Colorado Island is unusual in that it is a relatively contained, well-studied ecosystem where the movements of both the eagles and the various prey populations have been carefully tracked over many years. And the observations that have come out of this research have fundamentally changed how scientists think about the cognitive sophistication of birds of prey. One of the most striking findings from the Barrow, Colorado Island research is the behavior that researchers have described as psychological probing. Before committing to an active hunt of a monkey troop, a harpy eagle will often engage in what appears to be a deliberate assessment of that troop's alertness and organizational state. And the method it uses for this assessment is genuinely surprising. The eagle uses specific vocalizations, calls that are different from its territorial calls and its alarm calls, directed at the monkey troop. and it then observes the troop's response to these vocalizations. The response of the troop to these probing calls provides the eagle with information about the organizational state of the troop. A well-organized, alert troop, with experienced adults and an effective warning communication system, will respond to the probing calls in a coordinated way. The adults will immediately issue specific alarm calls that convey information about the predator type and location. The troop members will rapidly reorganize, moving together, keeping the most vulnerable individuals, the juveniles and the very old, toward the center of the group and surrounded by more capable adults. The troop will move to a part of the canopy that provides maximum cover and multiple escape routes. When the eagle observes this kind of organized, coordinated response to its probing calls, it typically aborts the hunt. It simply does not follow through with the attack. It may move to a different part of its territory and probe a different troop, or it may return to a resting perch and wait for a later opportunity. The decision to abort is not a failure of nerve. It is a rational energy management decision. An organized, alert monkey troop is an extremely difficult and dangerous target. The physical risks of being scratched, bitten, or dislodged by multiple coordinated defenders are real. The probability of a successful capture is low. And the energy cost of a failed hunt, the energy expended in the approach and the failed strike and the subsequent recovery, is significant. By contrast, when the probing calls elicit a disorganized, weak, or poorly coordinated response from the troop, the eagle is receiving a very different set of signals. Weak or absent alarm calling. Disorganized movement with individuals scattering independently rather than maintaining group cohesion. Failure to position the most vulnerable individuals in protected central positions. These are signs of a troop that is stressed, poorly organized, or contains inexperienced or incapacitated individuals. And when the eagle receives these signals, it is much more likely to commit to an active hunt. The sophistication of this behavior is remarkable. The eagle is not simply responding to the immediate visual situation. It is gathering behavioral information about the social and organizational state of the prey group, processing that information to make an assessment of hunt success probability and energy cost, and making a rational decision about whether to commit to the hunt based on that assessment. This is not instinct in any simple sense. This is behavioral flexibility guided by information processing. It is, in the most basic sense of the word, intelligence. And it does not stop there. The Barrow, Colorado Island research has revealed other aspects of Harpy Eagle behavior that point towards sophisticated cognitive processing. Individual eagles appear to learn the particular habits, routes, and behavioral patterns of specific monkey troops within their territory. They know, from experience, which troops are well organized and difficult to hunt. They know which troops have particular individuals that are vulnerable. They know the regular movement routes that different troops use, and they can position themselves in ambush at points along those routes where a surprise strike is most likely to succeed. This individual-specific knowledge, accumulated over time through observation and experience, is a hallmark of intelligence in the biological sense. It is the kind of learning that cannot be encoded in instinct, because instinct cannot anticipate the specific behavioral idiosyncrasies of individual troops in specific territories. It requires actual learning, actual memory, actual application of past experience to current decision-making. And the evidence from long-term behavioral studies of individual eagles strongly suggests that this kind of learning is real and important in shaping the hunting success of these birds. The implications of this intelligence are profound. It means that older, more experienced harpy eagles are not simply larger and stronger than young eagles. They are also more knowledgeable and tactically sophisticated. They know their territory in a way that a young, newly established eagle cannot match. They have detailed behavioral models of the prey populations within their territory that have been built up through years of observation. And this accumulated knowledge and tactical sophistication translates directly into hunting success and energetic efficiency. It also means that the loss of an experienced adult from a territory is even more costly than the simple loss of a breeding individual. It is the loss of all that accumulated knowledge, that detailed cognitive map of the territory and its prey, that library of behavioral models and tactical strategies that the experienced hunter has built up over years. A replacement adult, when one eventually arrives to fill the vacant territory, starts from scratch. It has to learn the territory from the beginning, make more hunting attempts before learning which are likely to succeed, expend more energy per successful kill. The cognitive investment that the experienced eagle made in learning its territory is simply gone. This cognitive complexity of the Harpy Eagle is a fitting note on which to begin the transition toward the deeper discussion of its behavior that will continue in the next part of this documentary. We have established the physical systems, the talons and the leg anatomy, the wings and the tail, the eyes with their double-fovea, the facial disc and the acoustic focusing system. We have begun to explore how these systems are integrated into the hunting behavior of one of nature's most formidable predators. We have touched on the social structure, the pair bond, the territory, the slow reproductive rate. And we have opened the door to the question of intelligence, of the cognitive sophistication that sits behind all the physical systems and directs them with a tactical acuity that continues to astonish the researchers who study this bird. What we have not yet done is dive into the full detail of the hunting strategies that the Harpy Eagle employs, the full complexity of the relationship between this eagle and the various prey species it pursues, the ecological role that the eagle plays as a keystone apex predator in the rainforest ecosystem, and the profound and urgent conservation challenges that this extraordinary species now faces in a world where its forest home is shrinking year by year. Those topics, and many more, will be the focus of the second part of this documentary. But for now, let us close this first part with a moment of appreciation. An attempt to step back from the fascinating details and the extraordinary specifics and simply absorb the magnitude of what the Harpy Eagle represents. Over millions of years, in one of the most complex, competitive, and demanding environments on the surface of this planet, evolutionary processes have forged an animal of breathtaking capability. Every system in this bird has been honed to a level of performance that challenges what we think is possible in a biological organism. The talons that grip with the force of a hydraulic clamp and hold without muscular effort. The wings that can drive a 9-kilogram body through a labyrinthine canopy at 80 kilometers per hour with surgical precision. The eyes that can resolve detail at distances many times beyond human visual range, with two distinct fovea in each eye serving the different demands of target acquisition and active tracking. The facial disc that focuses faint sounds from the distant understory to inform the eagle about prey it has not yet seen. The brain that integrates all of this information, builds predictive models of prey behavior, and makes rational tactical decisions about whether and how to. A moment when everything this species has evolved over tens of millions of years is being tested not by a rival predator, not by a changing climate, not by any of the challenges that have shaped it through its long evolutionary history, but by something entirely new. Something that the forces of natural selection could never have prepared it for. And that story, that urgent, sobering, ultimately hopeful story, continues in part 2. Thank you for watching the first part of this journey into the world of the Harpy Eagle, the apex predator of the South American rainforest. Please leave a comment letting us know where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. Your engagement means the world to us and helps us create more content like this. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so now, so you do not miss part 2, where the story of this extraordinary bird continues. We will see you there. Welcome back. If you are joining us for the first time, everything you are about to hear will be richer and more meaningful if you first watched part 1 of this documentary, where we laid the foundation for everything we are going to explore in the second half. We covered the extraordinary physical systems of the Harpy Eagle, the mechanical genius of those massive talons, the aerodynamic mastery of those short broad wings and that long ruddering tail, and the breathtaking sensory capability of those tube-shaped double-fovea eyes and that sound-focusing facial disc. We introduced the concept of tactical intelligence in this bird, that remarkable capacity for behavioral flexibility, and informed decision-making that elevates the Harpy Eagle from simply a powerful physical predator to something altogether more sophisticated and more fascinating. Now, in this second part, we go deeper. We follow the eagle into its hunts with granular, moment-by-moment detail. We explore the predator-prey arms race between the eagle and the intelligent social animals it hunts. We look at what the Harpy Eagle means for the rainforest ecosystem as a whole, the profound ecological role it plays simply by existing and hunting. We trace the remarkable journey of a young eagle from the moment of hatching to the achievement of full independence and hunting mastery. And we confront the most pressing and important question surrounding this species today. The question of survival. Not survival in the ecological sense, where the eagle faces no serious natural predators, but survival in the face of the one force in the modern world that this perfectly evolved killing machine is utterly powerless against. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do that now. Because what follows over the next hour and a half of narration is going to take you to places in the natural world that very few people ever get to go. Let us begin. To truly understand the hunting behavior of the harpy eagle at the level of detail that modern research has made possible, we need to first appreciate the temporal structure of a hunt. Not just the dramatic final strike, which is the moment that most people picture when they think about a raptor catching prey, but the entire sequence from the first hint of a prey animal's presence through to the final consumption of the kill. Because the harpy eagle's hunting is not primarily about the strike. The strike is just the last few seconds of a process that may have been developing for hours, or even days. The vast majority of the hunting process is cognitive and observational rather than physical. And understanding this is essential to understanding what makes this bird so effective. Let us construct a detailed picture of a typical hunt. Let us say it is early morning in the rainforest. The sun has been up for perhaps 2 hours, and the initial burst of dawn activity in the canopy is settling into the slightly quieter patterns of mid-morning. Our eagle, a large adult female, has been perched since before dawn on a high branch near the crown of one of the emergent trees that dot her territory. She has been in this position, motionless to any casual observer, for most of the night. Her eyes, those extraordinary optical instruments, have been tracking the gradual brightening of the sky and the emergence of activity in the canopy below her. Her facial disc has been oriented slightly forward and downward, capturing the sounds of the forest as it wakes, filtering and analyzing the acoustic landscape of her territory. She is not hungry in the urgent, desperate sense. She made a kill 3 days ago, a large adult male howler monkey that she caught in the middle canopy about 2 kilometers to the northeast of her current position. She has fed on that carcass twice since the kill, and there is still meat remaining on it, cached in a fork of the tree where she made the kill, protected from most scavengers by its height and by the eagle's proprietary presence over the carcass. But she is beginning to feel the edge of hunger again. Her energy reserves, that buffer of stored fat and glycogen that allows her to go days between active hunts, are diminishing. Not critically, not yet, but enough that her behavioral system is shifting into a more active hunting mode. This shift is not a sudden decision. It is a gradual change in the weighting of different behavioral drives. The drive to rest and conserve energy, which dominated her behavior yesterday, is now competing with and beginning to be outweighed by the drive to hunt. And as this internal balance shifts, her external behavior changes subtly. She begins to scan her environment more actively, moving her head more frequently, orienting her facial disc in different directions, taking in more of the acoustic landscape of her territory with systematic attention. Shortly after mid-morning, her ears catch something. A faint sound from the understory, approximately 80 meters to the south and about 30 meters below her current height. The sound is subtle, the kind of acoustic signal that would be completely inaudible to any observer without the acoustic amplification of the facial disc. But her disc focuses it clearly to her ears, and her auditory processing system immediately categorizes it. Movement. A mid-sized animal moving through branches. The specific pattern of the sound, the cadence of branch movement, the associated rustles and minor crackling sounds, is consistent with a primate of significant size. Her head rotates smoothly and precisely, orienting her eyes and her disc toward the source of the sound. For a long moment, she stares at the area from which the sound came. Her long-range fovea is working at maximum resolution, searching the tangle of branches and leaves for any visual confirmation. For almost 30 seconds, she sees nothing. The vegetation is dense in that area, multiple layers of leaves and branches creating a visual barrier between her position and the source of the sound. But then a branch 60 meters away moves in a way that is inconsistent with the gentle breeze that is stirring the upper canopy. It moves with the deliberate, weight-transferring motion of a large animal repositioning itself. Now she has visual confirmation. And with the information from both her acoustic and visual systems combined, she can make a first assessment. There is a large primate in the understory to her south, approximately 80 meters away. She cannot yet tell if it is alone or part of a group. She cannot yet clearly identify the individual or assess its alertness or condition. She needs more information before she can make a hunting decision. And so she does something that, to an observer watching without knowledge of what the eagle is doing, might look like nothing. She simply remains still and continues to watch. Over the next 20 minutes, she gathers information. Piece by piece, the picture fills in. 3 more movements from different positions in the same area of the understory reveal that she is not looking at a single animal but at a troop. The spacing of the movements, the direction of travel, the occasional faint vocalizations that drift up through the canopy to her disc, allow her to construct a mental map of the troop's structure and movement. She estimates from the pattern of movement that the troop consists of somewhere between 6 and 10 individuals. The direction of their travel is broadly east, roughly toward a section of the canopy that she knows well, a stretch of fruit-bearing trees that this troop has visited before. Now she has the basic intelligence she needs to make an initial hunting decision. Not whether to strike, that decision is still far away, but whether to reposition herself to allow for better observation and, potentially, a better strike angle. She calculates in the way that only a brain built for this specific purpose can calculate, assessing the geometry of her current position relative to the troop's current location and predicted trajectory, and identifying a better vantage point from which to continue her observation. She unfolds her wings and leaves the perch with a push of her powerful legs, dropping slightly before her wings catch the air and begin to generate lift. She moves south and slightly lower in the canopy, navigating with that extraordinary precision between branches and vine tangles, covering the 60 meters in a matter of seconds with barely a sound beyond the soft rush of air through her feathers. She settles on a new perch, one that gives her a clearer line of sight to the area where the troop is moving, and resumes her observation. From this closer, better positioned vantage point, she can now see individual members of the troop directly, though fleetingly as they move through gaps in the vegetation. She begins the process of individual assessment. Her long-range fovea resolves the details of each animal she can see with extraordinary clarity. She notes the size and apparent physical condition of each individual as it briefly comes into view. She notes the behavioral patterns of each one, assessing its alertness, its attention to the environment around it, its integration into the troop's movement pattern. This is where the research on Barrow, Colorado Island found one of its most remarkable revelations. The eagle's assessment at this stage is not simply about identifying the largest or the smallest individual in the troop. It is a multidimensional assessment that takes into account a range of factors that collectively contribute to the likely difficulty and probability of success of a hunt targeting that particular individual. Size matters, because a larger prey item means more food for the energy cost of a hunt, but it also means a more powerful animal that is harder to control in the grip. Physical condition matters, because a healthy, strong individual is more capable of escape and resistance than one that is ill, injured, or nutritionally stressed. Age matters, because very young animals lack the experience to respond optimally to a predator threat, while very old animals may have reduced physical capabilities. Position within the troop matters enormously, because an individual on the periphery of the troop is more exposed and has fewer nearby companions that could provide defensive assistance than an individual in the center of the group. And perhaps most importantly, alertness matters. An individual that is distracted, focused on feeding or social interaction, is far more vulnerable to a surprise approach than one that is actively monitoring the environment. The eagle's assessment includes a continuous evaluation of the attentional state of each individual in the troop, watching for the moments of distraction that create windows of opportunity. Now, in our scenario, the eagle has identified a potential target. A subadult male at the eastern edge of the troop's current position, slightly separated from the nearest other troop member, apparently focused on eating a piece of fruit that it has found in the branches. This animal is not the largest member of the troop, which is an advantage from a control perspective. It is physically healthy, which means it will be a stronger catch but also means it is worth hunting for the food value it represents. Its position at the edge of the troop reduces the likelihood of immediate defensive intervention from other troop members. And its current focus on the fruit means its attention is not fully directed outward. But before she commits to an approach, the eagle does something that the Barrow, Colorado Island researchers found deeply surprising when they first observed it consistently. She vocalizes. Not loudly, not the full territorial call that she uses to signal her presence to other eagles, but a softer, specific call that researchers have described as a probing vocalization. A call that carries far enough to reach the monkey troop but is not so loud as to immediately send them into full alarm mode. The troop responds, and the eagle reads that response with all the information processing power of her remarkable brain. The response is immediate and well organized. 3 adult males at different positions in the troop simultaneously issue specific alarm calls that identify the call as eagle-related. The troop immediately begins to consolidate, adults moving closer together, the subadult that the eagle had identified as a potential target moving quickly toward the nearest adult male. Within seconds, the loose, foraging spread of the troop has reorganized into a tighter, more defensively coherent cluster. Several individuals are now scanning the canopy actively, looking directly toward the area where the eagle is perched. The eagle reads this response clearly. This troop is alert, well organized, and has effective alarm communication. The specific individual she had identified as a target is now repositioned within the protective matrix of the group. The probability of a successful hunt against this troop, in its current state, is low. The energy cost of a failed attempt would be significant. And there is real physical risk in attempting to strike against a well-organized troop where multiple large males might actively defend against her. She makes her decision. She will not hunt this troop today. She settles back into a resting posture, watches for a few more minutes as the troop gradually relaxes from its alarm state and resumes its eastward movement, and then turns her attention to the rest of her territory. In this decision to abort, she has spent perhaps 35 minutes of careful observation and assessment, burned a relatively small amount of energy, gathered detailed current information about one of the monkey troops in her territory, and concluded, correctly, that this is not the moment to hunt them. She will remember this assessment. She will factor it into her decisions about this troop in the future. And she will look elsewhere for today's hunting opportunity. This scenario illustrates something fundamental about the Harpy Eagle that distinguishes it from many other predators. It is profoundly patient. It does not simply launch attacks repeatedly until one succeeds through brute persistence and numbers. It gathers information, makes assessments, and chooses its moments with a selectivity that reflects genuine cost-benefit reasoning. The energy saved by not making failed attempts is energy available for successful hunts. The information gathered during observation is capital that pays dividends in future hunting success. The patience is not passive. It is active, purposeful, and cognitively demanding. Now let us follow a different scenario, one that ends not in an abort but in a successful strike. Because it is important to understand both the decision-making that precedes a hunt and the physical execution of the hunt itself in its full, breathtaking detail. Our eagle has moved to a different part of her territory. It is now early afternoon. She has repositioned herself twice since the morning observation of the howler troop, each time following subtle acoustic cues and visual hints to the area where activity is highest. She is now perched at the edge of a section of canopy where a different troop of monkeys, spider monkeys this time, has been foraging in the fruit-laden crown of a large fig tree. Spider monkeys are, in many respects, a more challenging prey target than howler monkeys, and also more valuable. They are larger than howler monkeys, meaning more food per successful hunt. But they are also faster, more agile, and the spider monkey's long, prehensile limbs and tail give it extraordinary grip strength and three-dimensional maneuverability in the canopy that make it extremely difficult to dislodge once it has seized a branch. A spider monkey that sees a threat coming and has time to properly anchor itself in the branches is a formidable challenge even for a harpy eagle. Spider monkeys also have excellent alarm systems and high social intelligence. They form complex, fission-fusion societies, where the troop's composition changes dynamically as subgroups split off and rejoin throughout the day. This dynamic social structure means that the size and composition of any subgroup that the eagle encounters is variable, which adds complexity to the eagle's assessment of any potential hunting opportunity. The eagle has been observing the spider monkeys in the fig tree for approximately 40 minutes. The troop has been relaxed and focused on feeding, their attention primarily directed toward the ripe figs rather than toward potential threats from above. There is one individual that has caught the eagle's focused attention. A mid-sized adult female that has spent the last 15 minutes in the crown of the fig tree, positioned at the highest point of the tree's crown where the fig fruits are most abundant, but where the branches are also thinner and the foliage somewhat less dense than in the lower portions of the crown. This animal is partially exposed. She is within 2 or 3 meters of the very top of the fig tree's crown, where the branch density drops significantly, and the open sky is visible through gaps in the canopy above. This is a near-perfect hunting opportunity, and the eagle recognizes it as such. The target is large enough to be worth hunting. She is exposed at the top of the tree crown where the eagle's approach from above will be least obstructed by branches. She is currently focused on feeding, her attention directed at the fruit rather than at the sky. The rest of the troop is spread through the lower portions of the crown, close enough that alarm calls from the target will reach them quickly, but far enough that they cannot physically intervene in the seconds that the strike will take. And there is a clear approach angle. Coming in from the north and slightly above, the eagle can approach in a shallow dive that will keep her target in view throughout the approach while using the cover of the canopy's top surface to minimize the time during which the target can see her coming. She does not vocalize now. There is no probing call for a troop that is this relaxed and this well positioned for a strike. A probing call would serve only to alert them. Instead, she launches from her perch with sudden, explosive power, her wings driving her upward first to gain the altitude advantage she wants, and then banking sharply to the north and beginning her approach run. From the moment she leaves the perch to the moment of contact, approximately 12 seconds will elapse. In those 12 seconds, she covers approximately 250 meters, threading through the outer fringes of the canopy with that extraordinary aerodynamic precision, her speed building through the first half of the approach and then holding steady as she lines up her angle of attack. Her eyes are locked on the spider monkey. Not looking at the whole monkey. Looking at a specific point on the monkey's body, the spot on the back and shoulders where her talons need to land to deliver the maximum force to the most critical anatomical targets. The motion tracking fovea has taken over completely, maintaining an absolute lock on that target point through all the visual noise of the canopy rushing past around her. 40 meters from the target, her approach has been detected. The spider monkey, some peripheral motion or some subcortical alarm system detecting the rapid approach of a large shadow, snaps her attention away from the fruit. For a fraction of a second, the spider monkey freezes in the absolute paralysis of prey detection, her nervous system flooded with the recognition of immediate danger and momentarily overwhelmed by the computation of what to do. In that fraction of a second, the eagle covers 15 meters. Now the spider monkey moves. She releases her grip on the fruit-bearing branch with her hands and swings down and sideways, trying to drop into the denser foliage below the crown. It is exactly the right response, exactly what her evolved anti-predator instincts are telling her to do. If she can get below the crown's upper surface, into the denser branches, the eagle's approach angle becomes more obstructed and the strike more difficult. It is a good move. And it is just barely too slow. The eagle adjusts. In the last 10 meters of her approach, she shifts her angle slightly downward to track the monkey's dropping movement, a correction so precise and so fast that it is virtually impossible to follow in real time. Her wings fold partially to reduce drag and increase descent rate. Her feet swing forward from their tucked flight position, the talons spreading to their maximum width, 13 centimeters of curved, hardened keratin opening like a grappling hook being deployed. Contact. The talons connect with the spider monkey's back and shoulders at a combined speed of somewhere around 60 km per hour. The impact is enormous, the force of a fast-moving bird of significant mass concentrating through those 4 piercing points. The mechanical locking system engages instantly as the talons drive home and the grip contracts. The spider monkey's grip on the branches beneath her, which she was reaching for in the last moment of her escape attempt, fails under the impact. She is seized, controlled, effectively immobilized in the eagle's locked grip. For the next several seconds there is a brief, violent struggle. The spider monkey's long arms and prehensile tail are reaching for anything to grip, any branch, any vine, any purchase that might allow her to resist being lifted and carried. The other spider monkeys in the troop have exploded into alarm calling, some of them dropping through the canopy to lower levels and others moving toward the sounds of the struggle. But the eagle's wings are already working, pulling up and away from the fig tree's crown, and the mechanical grip on the spider monkey is absolute. Within seconds, the eagle has cleared the top of the fig tree and is moving away through the canopy, the spider monkey still struggling but already losing strength as the grip of those talons against its chest cavity constricts its breathing. The entire strike sequence, from the moment of detection by the prey to the moment the eagle cleared the top of the fig tree, lasted approximately 9 seconds. 9 seconds is all it took. 9 seconds from first detection to secured prey, in a bird that had spent 40 minutes in careful observation and assessment before committing to the attack. This ratio, the long observation and preparation phase versus the brief, explosive execution phase, is one of the most important things to understand about how the Harpy Eagle hunts. The intelligence and patience that go into the preparation are what make the 9-second execution possible. And the 9-second execution, made possible by all those extraordinary physical systems, is what makes the 40 minutes of observation and assessment worthwhile. Now let us think about what it is like to be the monkey. Because to fully understand the predator-prey dynamic between the Harpy Eagle and the intelligent social primates it hunts, we need to think about this relationship from both sides. And the perspective of the monkey reveals something fascinating. Something that tells us as much about the evolution of intelligence in the rainforest as anything we have discussed about the eagle itself. The monkey troops that live in Harpy Eagle territories are not passive victims. They are active participants in an evolutionary arms race that has been running for as long as Harpy Eagles and their primate prey have shared the same forest. Every hunting strategy the eagle has developed has created selective pressure on the monkey to develop countermeasures. And every countermeasure the monkey has developed has created selective pressure on the eagle to develop more sophisticated strategies. This reciprocal, escalating cycle of evolutionary innovation is one of the primary drivers of the cognitive complexity we see in both the eagle and the primate. Consider the spider monkey's alarm system. Spider monkeys, like many primate species, have a complex vocal communication system that includes alarm calls that are specifically structured to convey information about the type and position of a predator. They do not simply produce a generic alarm call that says danger. They produce specific vocalizations that say, in effect, aerial predator overhead, which is a very different threat requiring a very different response from ground predator approaching, or medium-sized terrestrial predator. The ability to produce and respond appropriately to these specific, information-rich alarm calls requires a degree of vocal and cognitive complexity that is significant. The specificity of the aerial predator alarm call is particularly interesting. When spider monkeys, or howler monkeys, or capuchin monkeys detect a harpy eagle, their alarm calls carry information that triggers a very specific set of behavioral responses in the other troop members. These responses include moving downward in the canopy, away from the eagle's approach, and moving toward denser vegetation where the eagle's maneuverability is most constrained. They include clustering together with the most vulnerable individuals toward the center, using the collective presence of multiple adult bodies to make the eagle's targeting more difficult. And they include, in some species, active mobbing behavior, where multiple troop members actively approach and harass the predator with vocalizations and physical displays, attempting to drive the eagle away from the area before it can make an attack. Mobbing behavior is a particularly fascinating response to the harpy eagle. The individual mobbers are taking a real risk. They are approaching the most dangerous predator in their environment, getting close enough to be seen and heard clearly, in an attempt to drive it away. The benefit of this behavior, if it succeeds, is the protection of the entire group, including the mobber's own family members. But the cost, if it fails and the eagle decides to target a mobber, is potentially fatal. The fact that mobbing behavior exists and is maintained in these species tells us something important about the social structure of the troop and the inclusive fitness calculations that underlie individual behavioral decisions. The response of monkey troops to Harpy Eagle hunting pressure also shapes the organization of the troop in ways that go beyond immediate alarm responses. Troops that live in territories with active Harpy Eagles show different patterns of daily movement, different habitat use, and different internal social organization compared to troops in areas without eagle predation pressure. Eagles create, through their predation, a constant background selection pressure that favors particular behavioral and social traits in the primate populations they hunt. Troops with effective alarm communication systems, good internal cohesion, and experienced adults who know the local predator population survive and reproduce better than troops without these traits. The presence of the eagle, in effect, actively shapes the cognitive and social evolution of its prey. This is one of the most profound effects a predator can have on its ecosystem, not just reducing prey numbers, but driving the evolution of intelligence and social complexity in the prey species. And there is good evidence that the relationship between large, intelligent raptors and intelligent social primates has been an important driver of primate cognitive evolution over millions of years. Some researchers have gone so far as to argue that the cognitive pressure imposed by aerial predation, from the Harpy Eagle and its predecessors in the evolutionary lineage, has been one of the key selective forces driving the evolution of the advanced social intelligence seen in modern primates. The need to maintain complex alarm communication systems, to coordinate group responses to predators, to assess the behavior and intentions of a sophisticated predator and make collective decisions about the optimal response. All of these demands favor the evolution of bigger, more flexible, more socially sophisticated brains. The Harpy Eagle did not evolve in a vacuum. It evolved in dynamic coevolutionary relationship with its prey. And that prey evolved, in response to the eagle, toward greater intelligence. The arms race ran in both directions, and both sides were changed by it. The specific knowledge that monkey troops accumulate about individual eagles in their territory is another remarkable manifestation of this cognitive arms race. In long-term studies of primate behavior, researchers have found that monkey troops develop individual-specific responses to individual predators. A troop that has been successfully hunted by a specific eagle in the past will show heightened alarm and faster, more coordinated escape responses when that specific eagle appears in their area, compared to their response to unfamiliar eagles. They recognize individual predators. They remember past encounters. They adjust their behavior based on that individual-specific knowledge. This is, of course, exactly the same kind of individual-specific knowledge that we described the Harpy Eagle having about the monkey troops in its territory. Both the predator and the prey are building cognitive models of specific individuals on the other side of the relationship, and using those models to inform their behavioral decisions. The intelligence arms race between the Harpy Eagle and the primates it hunts has produced, on both sides, a level of individual recognition and individual-specific behavioral adaptation that would not be out of place in a description of human social cognition. The sloths that the eagle also hunts present a completely different evolutionary response to predation pressure. Sloths, as we noted in Part 1, are not intelligent in the active, problem-solving, social sense that monkeys are. They have taken the opposite evolutionary path in response to predation pressure. Rather than evolving active defenses, complex alarm systems, and sophisticated escape behaviors, they have evolved the most complete passive defense strategy in the rainforest. They have become, so far as any moving animal can, invisible. The sloth strategy is the antithesis of the monkey strategy. Where the monkey responds to a predator with noise, movement, coordinated group behavior, and active escape, the sloth responds with absolute stillness and the best camouflage that evolution has managed to produce in a vertebrate of its size. The algae in the sloth's fur. The greenish-gray color pattern that matches lichen-covered branches. The tendency to hang in positions that break up the recognizable silhouette of a vertebrate body. The metabolic slowness that means minimal movement, and therefore minimal detectable motion. The sloth is betting everything on not being detected. It knows, in whatever sense a sloth can be said to know anything, that if it moves, it will be detected, and that if it is detected, it cannot escape. A sloth in motion in the canopy is obvious to any observer with adequate visual acuity. But a sloth in stillness, in the right position in the right tree, is genuinely difficult to find even when you know approximately where it is. Researchers with years of experience studying sloths have spent hours searching known areas for individual sloths they have radio-tracked to a specific tree, unable to visually locate the animal even when they knew it was within 10 meters of them. Against this level of camouflage, the eagle's facial disc and its sound-detecting capability become critical. A motionless, silent sloth is effectively invisible to a visual predator with normal visual acuity. But a sloth, despite its best efforts, is never completely silent. The minimal sounds of breathing, the occasional slight shift of grip position, the tiny sounds of the sloth's digestive processes. These faint, almost inaudible sounds are amplified by the eagle's facial disc to a level where they become detectable and directionally useful. The eagle can, in effect, hear the sloth it cannot see. This specific hunting challenge, finding a camouflaged, nearly motionless prey animal by sound, has driven a particular specialization in the harpy eagle's perch hunting behavior when targeting sloths. The eagle will position itself on a branch from which it has a commanding acoustic view of a broad area of canopy and understory, and then enter a state of extraordinary stillness and focused listening that can last for hours. It is scanning acoustically, sweeping its disc across different directions, alert for the faintest acoustic hint of a sloth's presence. When it detects something, the process is slow and careful. It orients its eyes toward the detected sound source and begins the visual search, scanning the area with the maximum resolution of its long-range fovea, looking for the subtle visual cues that betray the sloth's presence. Not the sloth's body itself necessarily, but the slight depression of the branch it is hanging from, the angle of hang that is slightly inconsistent with the natural drape of a vine or a branch, the very faint difference in surface texture between the sloth's algae-covered fur and the true moss or lichen on the branch behind it. When the eagle finally locates a sloth by these subtle visual cues, the approach is very different from the explosive dive approach used against monkeys. The sloth is not going to flee. There is no need for the explosive, surprise-maximizing acceleration of the monkey hunt. Instead, the eagle approaches deliberately, using the canopy structure to conceal its approach for as long as possible, not because the sloth will flee if it detects the eagle, but because a sloth that has had time to maximize its grip on the branch before the eagle reaches it is significantly harder to detach than one that is struck before it can prepare. The strike on a well-gripped sloth is, as we discussed in Part 1, more of a sustained pull than an explosive impact strike. The eagle lands on or near the sloth, gets its talon grip established, and then applies sustained, powerful lifting force with its wings while the mechanical locking grip of its feet prevents any energy loss from grip relaxation. It is a test of the sloth's passive grip strength against the eagle's active pulling force, and while the sloth's grip is remarkable for an animal of its size, it is ultimately not a contest that the sloth can win against a bird with the pulling force of a harpy eagle. Researchers have timed these extraction attempts and found that the process of pulling a well-gripped sloth free of its branch can take anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes, depending on the individual sloth's grip strength and the specific geometry of the branch it is gripping. This extended engagement is energetically costly for the eagle, and it means that sloth hunting, while safer in some respects than monkey hunting because the sloth poses no active physical threat to the eagle, is not always energetically cheap. The energy investment in a prolonged extraction attempt has to be weighed against the energetic value of the sloth as a food item. This calculation, the cost-benefit analysis of different prey types, plays out across all of the harpy eagle's hunting decisions. Monkeys are nutritionally valuable but cognitively challenging and physically risky to hunt. Sloths are generally safer to approach and grip but may require significant energy in extraction and are more difficult to find. Large lizards and snakes are easier in some respects but smaller, meaning less food value per hunt. The eagle integrates all of these factors, along with the current state of its energy reserves, the current distribution of prey in its territory, and the historical information it has accumulated about specific prey individuals and groups, to make the hunting decisions that optimize its long-term energetic balance. This optimization is not a mathematical calculation in the sense that a human engineer would perform. It is not a conscious, deliberate weighing of precisely quantified costs and benefits. But it produces outcomes that are functionally equivalent to such a calculation. The eagle's behavior, shaped by millions of years of natural selection acting on the outcomes of those decisions, approaches the theoretically optimal solution to the problem of energy management in a large apex predator and a low-productivity hunting environment. Now let us turn from the hunting behavior of the adult eagle to one of the most remarkable and underappreciated aspects of the Harpy eagle's life history: the process of raising a chick. Because the journey from egg to fully independent apex predator is one of the most demanding, complex, and fascinating developmental trajectories in the animal kingdom. And it reveals aspects of the eagle's biology and behavior that illuminate the species in ways that the hunting behavior alone cannot. The breeding cycle of the Harpy eagle begins with courtship, and the courtship behavior of these birds, while not as elaborate as the display flights of some other raptor species, has its own understated power. The pair, who may have been together for many years, reinforce their bond through a series of mutual behaviors at the nest site. They exchange vocalizations that are different in quality and character from their territorial calls. They engage in mutual preening, a behavior that, in birds, serves both a practical function of removing parasites from hard-to-reach areas and a social bonding function that reinforces the pair relationship. They may engage in short, cooperative display flights over their territory, flying together in ways that reinforce the territorial boundaries and signal the pair's presence and status to any other eagles that might be in the area. The nest itself, as we touched on in Part 1, is a structure of genuinely impressive scale. The largest documented Harpy eagle nests have been structures reaching close to 2 meters in diameter and nearly a meter in depth, constructed primarily of large sticks and branches, lined with softer plant material and leaves to create a relatively smooth, comfortable surface for the egg and the developing chick. These nests are typically located in the crown of one of the largest available trees in the territory, often a mature Brazil nut tree, a kapok tree, or another giant of the forest. The selection of the nest tree reflects several competing considerations. The tree needs to be tall enough to place the nest above or at the level of the main canopy, providing the openness and the commanding view that the eagles prefer. It needs to have a crown structure that can support the significant weight of the nest and that provides a stable, secure platform even in strong winds. It needs to be accessible to the adults, which in the dense canopy means the crown cannot be so densely packed with vegetation that the large eagles cannot fly in and out easily. And it needs to be in a location within the territory that allows both adults convenient access to the hunting areas they use most frequently. Once the nest is selected and prepared, the female lays the eggs. The clutch size is typically 1 or 2 eggs, laid a few days apart. The eggs are large, as befits the large bird that will develop inside them, roughly 10 centimeters in length, white with faint brownish markings. Both parents participate in incubation, though the female takes the majority of the incubation duty, spending most of each day and night on the eggs while the male brings food and takes shorter incubation shifts. The incubation period lasts approximately 56 days, almost 8 weeks, during which the embryo develops from a fertilized cell to a fully formed, ready-to-hatch chick. The hatching of the chick is the beginning of the most demanding phase of the Harpy eagle's parental investment cycle. The newly hatched chick is, relative to what it will become, almost heartbreakingly helpless. It is covered in white down rather than feathers. Its eyes are open but its vision is initially limited. It cannot thermoregulate, meaning it cannot maintain its own body temperature, and is completely dependent on the brooding parent for warmth. It cannot stand properly or support its own weight effectively. And it needs to be fed frequently with small pieces of pre-torn meat that the parents must carefully process from larger prey items before offering to the chick. The early weeks of the chick's life are a period of intense parental investment. The female spends the great majority of her time at the nest, brooding the chick and keeping it warm, while the male hunts almost continuously to provide the food that both the chick and the female require. This is the period when the male's smaller size may confer real advantages in hunting efficiency, as he can take a wider range of prey sizes, including the smaller prey items that are appropriate for feeding to a young chick, more efficiently than the large female could. The chick grows rapidly. In the first few weeks, its daily weight gain is remarkable, fueled by the constant supply of protein-rich meat that the male brings to the nest. The white down of the hatchling begins to be replaced, gradually, by a second coat of gray-white down, and then later by the beginning of the juvenile plumage that will cover the bird through its first years of life. The chick's eyes sharpen in their focus. Its legs, those instruments of future lethal power, begin to develop the muscle mass that will eventually allow them to grip with 50 kilograms of pressure. By the time the chick is about 6 weeks old, it is significantly larger than it was at hatching and has begun to develop some capacity for thermoregulation, meaning the female can start to spend less time physically brooding it, and can begin to take a more active role in hunting again. This transition is important for the family's energetics, because having both adults contributing to the food supply significantly increases the rate at which prey can be brought to the nest and allows the chick to continue its rapid growth through this critical developmental period. Around 5 to 6 months after hatching, the chick will make its first flight. But calling this moment fledging in the traditional sense would be misleading, because the young Harpy Eagle is far from independent at this point. The first flights are short, exploratory movements away from the nest, testing the wings and beginning to build the flight muscle mass and coordination that eventually capable canopy hunting demands. The young eagle spends considerable time in the vicinity of the nest during this period, practicing its flying in the relatively safe, familiar environment of the nest tree and the immediately surrounding canopy. The parents continue to feed the fledgling for many months after this first flight. The young eagle is not capable of hunting for itself, and it knows this. It returns to the nest or to nearby branches to receive food from the parents, who continue the demanding work of provisioning not just one but now an effectively independent-sized individual with the food energy it needs. This extended parental provisioning, which may continue for a year or more after fledging, represents an extraordinary investment of energy by the breeding pair. During this post-fledging period, the young eagle is learning everything it will need to know to survive as an independent predator. It is learning now, partly by observing the parents' hunting behavior, and partly by beginning its own tentative, failed, gradually improving attempts at hunting. The early hunting attempts of a young Harpy Eagle are, by adult standards, comically inept. The bird lacks the precise targeting, the flight control, and the tactical knowledge to be consistently successful. It strikes at prey that is too alert. It commits to approaches from angles that give the prey too much escape time. It fails to adequately assess the defensive capability of monkey troops. It makes mistakes that an experienced adult would never make. But each failed attempt is a learning experience. Each failure provides information about what went wrong and what needs to be different next time. The young eagle's brain, which by this age has much of the raw processing power of an adult eagle's brain, is continuously updating its models of prey behavior, of hunting geometry, of the relationship between its own physical capabilities and the demands of different hunting scenarios. Very slowly, over many months, the quality of the hunting attempts improves. The first successful independent kill of a young Harpy Eagle is typically a relatively small and easy prey item. A large lizard caught in an inattentive moment. A juvenile monkey that has become separated from its troop. A sloth that is moving between trees and is briefly exposed. These first kills are significant not just as nutrition but as the foundation of a skill set that will develop over the next several years into the extraordinary tactical hunting ability of a full adult. It takes a Harpy Eagle approximately 4 to 5 years from hatching to reach full adult plumage, full adult size, and full adult hunting capability. During this period, the young eagle goes through a series of plumage changes that track its gradual development. The juvenile plumage is quite different from the adult plumage, paler and less dramatically marked, and the progression through intermediate plumage stages to the full black and white adult coloration of a mature Harpy Eagle is a visual record of the years of growth and learning that have passed. The young eagle will typically leave its parents' territory sometime during its second or third year of life, when the parents' tolerance for its presence begins to wane as they may be beginning another breeding cycle. At this point, the juvenile, still not fully adult in its hunting capability, or its knowledge, must find its own home range and begin the long process of establishing itself in the local eagle population. This is perhaps the most dangerous period of a harpy eagle's life. It is large enough to be conspicuous but not experienced enough to hunt efficiently. It must find enough food in a landscape where the best territories are already occupied by experienced adults, while developing the skills and building the strength to eventually compete for a territory of its own. Those that survive this challenging period, and the mortality rate among young harpy eagles during this dispersal phase is estimated to be significantly higher than the mortality rate of established adults, eventually reach breeding maturity and begin the cycle again. And those that survive long enough to become experienced, territory-holding adults may live for 25 to 35 years. In those years of adult life, they may raise somewhere between 7 and 12 chicks, a modest reproductive output that reflects the extraordinary investment each of those chicks requires and the slow, deliberate pace of this species' relationship with time. Having followed the eagle through its hunting behavior and its life history, let us now step back and ask a bigger question. A question that goes beyond the individual eagle and its prey to the level of the entire ecosystem. What does it mean for the rainforest that the harpy eagle is there? What is the impact of this apex predator on the ecological community it inhabits? Because the answer to this question reveals something profound about the role of apex predators in maintaining the health and integrity of complex ecosystems. The concept of the keystone species, introduced by ecologist Robert Payne in the 1960s following his work on rocky intertidal communities, describes a species whose impact on its ecosystem is disproportionately large relative to its abundance. Remove a keystone species from an ecosystem, and the consequences cascade through the food web in ways that dramatically reshape the community. Keep the keystone species in place, and the ecosystem maintains a structure and stability that its mere abundance would not predict. The harpy eagle is, in the fullest sense, a keystone species in the Amazon rainforest ecosystem. Despite being present at very low densities, one pair per 25 to 100 square kilometers of forest, the eagle's impact on the rainforest community is enormous and multifaceted. And to understand why, we need to understand the concept of a trophic cascade, one of the most important and counterintuitive ideas in modern ecology. A trophic cascade begins with the top predator and ripples downward through the food web, affecting not just the predator's immediate prey but the prey of the prey, and the prey of the prey of the prey, all the way down to the plants at the base of the food web. The classic illustration of a trophic cascade is the well-documented case of wolves and their effect on the forests of Yellowstone, where the reintroduction of wolves not only reduced deer numbers but changed deer behavior, which reduced overgrazing of streamside vegetation, which allowed riparian forests to recover, which changed the hydrology of streams, which changed the physical landscape. A cascade of effects flowing from the presence of a single top predator down through the entire ecosystem. The harpy eagle drives a similar cascade in the rainforest, though the specific mechanisms are somewhat different given the different structure of the rainforest food web. The eagle's primary prey, the monkeys and sloths that it hunts, are themselves major consumers of plant material. Monkeys, in particular, are among the most important consumers of fruit, seeds, leaves, and flowers in the rainforest canopy. They are also among the most important dispersers of seeds, carrying fruit seeds through the canopy and depositing them in their feces far from the parent tree. When the harpy eagle hunts monkeys, it does several things to the monkey population and its ecological effects. First, it reduces the total monkey biomass in its territory, which reduces the total consumption of plant material by monkeys in that area. This can have positive effects on the regeneration of plant species that monkeys heavily exploit. Second, it influences the spatial distribution of monkey troops, because troops actively avoid areas and movement patterns that expose them to eagle predation, and this behavioral avoidance creates a spatial pattern of monkey activity that differs from what would be seen in the absence of predation pressure. Third, by preferentially hunting certain individuals, particularly the old, the young, the isolated, and the incapacitated, the eagle acts as a selective force on the monkey population, removing individuals that might otherwise accumulate in the population without contributing productively to its genetic health. The effect on seed dispersal is particularly interesting and subtle. Different monkey species disperse different plant species seeds, and the spatial pattern of seed dispersal, where in the forest seeds are deposited, has important effects on where those plant species regenerate, and therefore on the long-term composition of the forest. The Harpy Eagle's influence on monkey spatial behavior changes the spatial pattern of seed dispersal, which changes the spatial pattern of plant regeneration, which changes the long-term composition and structure of the forest. This is a cascade that operates over timescales of decades to centuries, but it is real and it is significant. The eagle's hunting of sloths creates its own set of cascading effects. Sloths are important consumers of leaves, and in some forest areas they are among the most abundant large mammals by biomass, despite their individual slow movement and low metabolic rates. The presence of Harpy Eagle predation pressure limits sloth population density and influences sloth distribution within the forest, which in turn affects the pattern of leaf consumption by sloths and the competitive dynamics between the plant species that sloths prefer and those they avoid. There is also a direct effect of the eagle's presence on the behavior of prey species that goes beyond the simple avoidance of predation. The constant threat of eagle predation imposes what ecologists call a landscape of fear on the monkey and sloth populations. This landscape of fear describes the spatial variation in predation risk across the territory, and the behavioral responses of prey to this variation. Areas where the eagle is known to hunt frequently, where trees or branches provide good perches for the eagle, where canopy structure gives the eagle good approach angles, all of these become areas of elevated predation risk that prey animals preferentially avoid. And this avoidance changes the spatial distribution of their foraging activity in ways that have cascading effects on the plants in those areas. The concept of the landscape of fear reveals that the ecological impact of a predator is not limited to the animals it actually kills. The behavioral changes induced in the broader prey population by the mere existence of predation risk are themselves ecologically significant. A monkey troop that avoids a particular area of the canopy because that area is known to be a preferred hunting ground for the local harpy eagle is having an impact on the plants in that area, even though no eagle-monkey interaction is actually occurring there. The eagle's shadow, in effect, falls far beyond the areas where it actually hunts. This means that the ecological contribution of the harpy eagle to the rainforest ecosystem is not simply a function of how many animals it kills per year. It is a function of its presence, its activity, and the behavioral landscape it creates for all the prey species in its territory. An ecosystem with harpy eagles is fundamentally different from the same ecosystem without them, not just in the numbers of monkeys and sloths but in the spatial distribution of those animals, in the pattern of plant consumption and seed dispersal, in the composition and structure of the vegetation, and ultimately in the overall biodiversity and stability of the community. This profound ecological role is one of the most important reasons why the conservation of the harpy eagle matters far beyond the intrinsic value of preserving a magnificent species. The loss of the harpy eagle from a forest ecosystem is not simply the loss of one species. It is the disruption of a complex web of ecological relationships that has taken millions of years to develop, and whose unraveling would cascade through the ecosystem in ways that might not become fully apparent for decades but would ultimately reshape the forest in fundamental ways. And this brings us, finally and necessarily, to the most urgent part of this story. The conservation reality that the harpy eagle faces in the modern world. Because everything we have celebrated in this documentary, the extraordinary physical capability, the cognitive sophistication, the ecological importance, all of it exists under a shadow. A shadow cast by the one force in the modern world that all the eagle's extraordinary capabilities are powerless against. The harpy eagle is listed as vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of Threatened Species. Vulnerable. It is a word that sits uncomfortably beside everything else we have said about this bird. Vulnerable seems like the wrong word for an animal that grips with 50 kilograms of pressure, that flies at 80 kilometers per hour through a labyrinthine canopy, that has sensory systems evolved to detect and hunt the most intelligent and elusive prey in one of the world's most complex ecosystems. And yet the word is accurate. Because the threat that this bird faces does not come from any rival in its environment. No animal in the Amazon rainforest, no predator, no competitor, no disease, poses a significant threat to a healthy adult harpy eagle. In its natural environment, the eagle is effectively invulnerable. The threat comes from outside the eagle's evolutionary experience. It comes from the loss and fragmentation of the rainforest itself. From the axes and chainsaws and bulldozers and fires that are consuming the Amazon and the broader South American rainforest at a rate that has no precedent in the history of this ecosystem. From the conversion of forest to agricultural land, to cattle pasture, to soy fields, to palm oil plantations. From the roads that slice through previously intact forest, bringing settlers and loggers and miners and the full transformative force of modern human economic activity into ecosystems that had never previously experienced it. The scale of tropical deforestation in South America is genuinely staggering. The Amazon rainforest, which once covered approximately 5.5 million square kilometers of the South American continent in a continuous, unbroken carpet of ancient forest, has already lost somewhere between 15 and 20% of its total original area. And that number understates the problem, because deforestation is not evenly distributed. The remaining forest is not simply a somewhat smaller version of the original. It is fragmented. Broken into patches of varying size, separated by cleared land, threaded with roads and rivers and agricultural development. And fragmentation changes everything. To understand why fragmentation is so catastrophic for the harpy eagle specifically, you need to recall everything we have learned about this bird's ecology. The eagle requires a territory of 25 to 100 square kilometers of intact, mature rainforest. Not degraded forest. Not young secondary forest regenerating after clearing. Mature, intact, primary rainforest, with the full vertical complexity from forest floor to emergent crown, with populations of large-bodied prey animals of sufficient density to support a breeding pair, and with the physical structure of the canopy that the eagle's entire hunting toolkit is designed to exploit. Fragmentation destroys this requirement in multiple ways. A forest fragment of, say, 5 square kilometers cannot support a breeding pair of harpy eagles. It is simply too small. The prey populations it can support are too few and too small for a pair of large, high-energy predators to subsist on. And even if the fragment were large enough for one pair, the isolation of that fragment from other forest areas means that when breeding adults die, young eagles from other areas cannot easily reach the fragment to replace them. The patch becomes an ecological island, isolated by a sea of cleared land, and the eagle population in that patch, if it exists at all, is on a trajectory toward local extinction simply because of demographic randomness in a small population. The edges of forest fragments also present specific problems. Where forest meets cleared land, the microclimate changes. The humidity that the interior forest maintains drops dramatically near the edges, because the trees of the interior forest, which create and maintain the humid microclimate of the rainforest through transpiration and interception of rainfall, are no longer there to buffer the influence of the hot, dry conditions of the cleared land outside. This edge effect penetrates hundreds of meters into the forest from the clearing boundary, changing the vegetation structure, reducing the diversity of understory species, and altering the density and distribution of prey animals. An eagle hunting near a forest edge is operating in a degraded habitat with fewer prey and a different structural context from the mature, interior forest that its hunting toolkit is optimized for. The highly specialized nature of the harpy eagle's hunting toolkit, which in intact forest is its greatest strength, becomes a liability in fragmented or degraded habitat. The short, broad wings that allow it to fly at high speed through a dense, mature canopy are not optimized for hunting in the more open, structurally simpler environment near forest edges. The acoustic focusing of the facial disc is tuned to detect prey sounds in the specific acoustic context of a mature, dense forest, where the acoustic properties of the environment have shaped the evolution of both the eagle's hearing and the sounds made by its prey. The entire integrated system of physical and cognitive adaptations is calibrated to the specific, complex, mature rainforest environment. When that environment is destroyed or degraded, the toolkit becomes less effective. Not useless, because the harpy eagle is adaptable to a degree, and individuals have been observed hunting in forest fragments and in disturbed habitats. But significantly less effective. Hunting success rates drop. Energy expenditure per successful kill rises. Prey density in degraded habitats is lower, meaning more time must be spent hunting to get the same nutritional return. All of these factors increase the energetic stress on eagles living in fragmented or degraded habitats, which reduces their reproductive success and increases their mortality rate. There is another threat that comes specifically from the human presence that accompanies deforestation. Direct persecution. In many parts of the eagle's range, particularly in areas of recent agricultural development where forest has been recently cleared and small farms and ranches have been established, harpy eagles are killed by the people who now live in their former habitat. The reasons vary. Sometimes the eagles are killed out of fear, a misplaced belief that the eagles pose a threat to children or to livestock. Sometimes they are killed for trophy purposes, the size and magnificence of the bird making it a target for those who collect wildlife trophies. Sometimes they are killed simply because they are large and visible and the person who sees them has a firearm and no reason not to shoot. Each of these killings is a significant loss to the local population. Given the slow reproductive rate of the eagle, the death of a single adult removes years of future reproductive potential from the population. And the geographic patterns of these killings are often concentrated in exactly the areas where the eagle is already most stressed by habitat loss, creating a double pressure that compounds the population decline in the most vulnerable areas. There is also the threat of disturbance at nest sites. Harpy eagles are sensitive to human disturbance at their nests, particularly during the incubation and early chick-rearing phases. Logging activity near a nest site, heavy human traffic through the nest trees area, or the presence of people at the nest itself can cause adults to abandon the nest, losing the eggs or the chick. This sensitivity to nest disturbance means that even forest areas that are not completely cleared but are subject to selective logging or human activity can experience reduced eagle reproduction, contributing to population decline even in nominally forested areas. The combination of these threats, habitat loss and fragmentation, reduced hunting effectiveness in degraded habitats, direct persecution, and nest disturbance, has driven significant declines in harpy eagle populations throughout much of its historical range. In many parts of its former range, the eagle is now locally extinct or present only at very low density. In the more heavily developed and populated regions of South America, where the combination of deforestation and human population density is highest, the eagle is virtually gone. The remaining viable populations are concentrated in the areas of lowest human population density and highest forest cover. The geographic heart of the remaining harpy eagle population is the intact forest areas of the central and western Amazon basin, where large areas of relatively undisturbed forests still exist and where human population density remains low enough that the eagles can maintain viable territories without constant conflict with human activity. The Guiana Shield region, the forests of the Venezuelan and Guianan interior, and the forests of parts of the western Amazon in Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador, remain areas of relatively high eagle density and viable breeding populations. But these remaining strongholds are not secure. The frontiers of agricultural development in South America have been advancing steadily for decades, and the trajectory of development continues to put pressure on the intact forests that the eagle depends on. The road systems that are being built through previously remote forest areas bring settlers and commercial exploitation in their wake. The economic pressures that drive deforestation are powerful and sustained, and the political and institutional frameworks for protecting the remaining forest and the species that depend on it are imperfect and unevenly implemented. Conservation efforts for the harpy eagle are active and ongoing, and they take several different forms that together constitute a multifaceted strategy for protecting the species. Research and monitoring programs work to understand the current distribution and population status of eagles across their range, identifying areas of high conservation value and areas of particular risk. These programs use a combination of field surveys, camera trapping, radio and satellite tracking of individual eagles, and analysis of remote sensing data to build an increasingly detailed picture of where eagles are, how they are using the landscape, and what threats they face. Captive breeding programs maintain small populations of harpy eagles in controlled settings, both as an insurance population against catastrophic wild population decline and as a source of birds for educational programs and, in some cases, reintroduction efforts. Harpy eagles have been successfully raised in captivity and reintroduced to protected forest areas where the species had been locally extirpated, with some success. Reintroduction is not a substitute for protecting wild habitat, but it can help to restore eagle populations to areas where the habitat is still adequate but the eagle is no longer present due to historical persecution or local extinction. Community engagement and education programs work with the people who live in and around the eagle's habitat, recognizing that the long-term conservation of any species ultimately depends on the support and engagement of the communities whose land and livelihoods are most directly affected by conservation efforts. These programs work to change the attitudes of rural communities toward the eagle, replacing the fear and indifference that lead to persecution with understanding and appreciation. They demonstrate the ecological value of the eagle as an indicator of healthy forest ecosystems. They work to create economic incentives for forest conservation, through ecotourism and payment for ecosystem services schemes, that make protecting the forest financially competitive with clearing it for agricultural development. Protected area networks, national parks and indigenous territories and biological reserves provide the strongest protection for the forests that the eagle needs. Within well-managed protected areas, deforestation rates are dramatically lower than in unprotected forests, and the eagle populations in these areas show greater stability than those in unprotected areas. Expanding and strengthening the protected area network in the eagle's range is one of the most effective conservation interventions available. But the reality is that protected areas alone cannot save the harpy eagle, or the rainforest it depends on. Most of the South American rainforest that remains is outside of protected areas. Most of the eagle's remaining habitat is on land that is not formally protected and that faces ongoing pressures from agricultural development. A conservation strategy that relies solely on protected areas will ultimately fail because it concedes the vast majority of the landscape to development and attempts to maintain viable eagle populations in a shrinking archipelago of protected islands surrounded by a sea of converted land. The long-term conservation of the harpy eagle requires something more ambitious and more difficult. It requires changing the fundamental economic and policy framework that governs land use in South America in ways that make forest conservation economically viable and politically sustainable. It requires ensuring that the value of intact tropical forests, including the extraordinary biodiversity it supports and the ecosystem services it provides, including carbon sequestration, water cycling, and climate regulation, is adequately recognized and compensated in the economic calculations that drive land use decisions. It requires the kind of sustained political will and international cooperation that is genuinely difficult to achieve but is ultimately necessary if the remaining great rainforests of South America are to be preserved. These are large, complex, difficult challenges. They involve politics and economics and history and culture in ways that go far beyond the biology and ecology we have discussed in this documentary. But they are the challenges that must be addressed if the harpy eagle is to have a future. And given everything we have explored today about what this bird is, about what it represents as a product of millions of years of evolutionary refinement, about the profound ecological role it plays in one of the world's most important ecosystems, the argument for making that effort, for investing the political will and the economic resources needed to address these challenges, seems overwhelming. Let us now take a broader view of the harpy eagle's place in the natural and cultural history of the continent it inhabits. Because this bird has not existed in isolation from the human cultures that have shared its forests for thousands of years. The indigenous peoples of South America have lived alongside the harpy eagle for millennia, and the eagle has left deep and enduring marks on the cultural and spiritual life of these communities. For many Amazonian indigenous cultures, the harpy eagle is not simply a large bird of prey. It is a being of spiritual power, a symbol of strength and mastery, a creature whose feathers, claws, and form are woven into the ceremonial and symbolic life of the community. The feathers of the harpy eagle are among the most prized ceremonial materials in many Amazonian cultures, used to adorn headdresses and other ceremonial objects that mark significant events, statuses, and transitions in the community's life. The eagle itself is often associated in indigenous cosmologies with powerful spiritual forces, with the sky, with leadership, with the highest levels of the spiritual hierarchy that structures the indigenous understanding of the natural world. The relationship between indigenous communities and the Harpy Eagle is complex and has not always been a relationship of pure reverence. In some indigenous cultures, there is a tradition of capturing Harpy Eagle chicks from nests and raising them in the community, where they serve as living embodiments of spiritual power and as sources of the prized feathers that are periodically plucked for ceremonial use. These captive eagles were treated with great respect and were often seen as members of the community in a meaningful sense, but the practice of capturing and keeping them necessarily removed them from the wild population. However, the broader relationship between Amazonian indigenous communities and the forests they inhabit is one of the most important factors in the long-term conservation of both the eagle and the rainforest. The territories of Amazonian indigenous peoples, which in several South American countries have legal recognition and protection, overlap substantially with the most intact and ecologically valuable areas of the Amazon basin. The forest management practices of indigenous communities, developed over thousands of years of intimate coexistence with the ecosystem, tend to maintain forest cover and biodiversity at levels that compare favorably with formerly protected areas. The recognition and strengthening of indigenous territorial rights is, therefore, one of the most effective conservation interventions available for the Harpy Eagle and for the Amazon rainforest as a whole. When indigenous communities have secure land rights and the political empowerment to enforce those rights, they are generally effective stewards of the forest resources their territories encompass. And the forests within secure indigenous territories are among the best preserved and most biodiverse areas remaining in the Amazon basin. The connection between indigenous peoples, their land rights, and the conservation of the Harpy Eagle is an example of a broader truth that conservation science has increasingly recognized over the past several decades. Conservation is not something that happens in isolation from human communities. It happens in landscapes that are shared between people and wildlife, and it succeeds when the interests of those human communities and the needs of the wildlife are aligned rather than in conflict. The most successful long-term conservation outcomes, for the Harpy Eagle and for many other species, will be those that emerge from genuine partnerships between conservation institutions and the indigenous and local communities whose lives are most directly connected to the ecosystems in question. As we approach the conclusion of this documentary, let us return to the eagle itself. To the living, breathing, flying, hunting reality of this bird in its forest home. Because all the biology and ecology and conservation policy we have discussed is ultimately in service of one thing: the continued existence of the Harpy Eagle as a living presence in the South American rainforest. The continued experience of those rainforest mornings when the eagle launches from its emergent tree perch and threads its way through the canopy. The continued experience of those moments when a monkey troop, alerted by an alarm call, reorganizes in rapid, coordinated response to the eagle's presence. The continued experience of the whole extraordinary, ancient, complex, living relationship between this apex predator and the ecosystem it rules. What does it mean, experientially, to be in the presence of a wild Harpy Eagle? Very few people have had this experience, because the birds are rare, wary, and inhabit some of the most remote and inaccessible forests on Earth. But those who have been fortunate enough to encounter one of these birds in its natural habitat consistently describe the experience in terms that go beyond mere ornithological interest. There is something about the presence of this bird, something in the scale of it, in the golden intensity of those eyes, in the absolute physical authority of its posture, that transcends the intellectual appreciation of its biological capabilities and produces a response that is more visceral, more fundamental. Field biologists who have spent time observing Harpy eagles in the wild often describe a sense of privilege that they find difficult to articulate. Not the kind of pleasure one gets from watching a beautiful sunset or a spectacular landscape, though the eagle is certainly visually spectacular, but something more like being admitted, briefly and conditionally, to a level of the natural world that normally exists entirely beyond human awareness. The eagle, perched on its branch and regarding the observer with those extraordinary eyes, seems utterly indifferent to human presence in a way that is simultaneously humbling and clarifying. It does not see in the human observer a threat, a resource, a competitor, or even a particularly interesting phenomenon. It sees something that is simply not relevant to its world. And in that irrelevance there is something profound. The world of the Harpy Eagle is older than our species. It is older than agriculture, older than cities, older than writing, older than any human cultural achievement. It is a world of relationships between species that have been developing for tens of millions of years, relationships so intricate and so deep that our scientific understanding of them is, for all its sophistication, still in its early chapters. The Harpy Eagle has been ruling the rainforest canopy for longer than our kind has been walking upright. It has watched the rise and fall of ecosystems, the movement of continental plates, the waxing and waning of ice ages and warm periods, the evolution and extinction of species across geological time. It has survived all of that. Everything the natural world has thrown at it over millions of years, the Harpy Eagle has endured and adapted and persisted. The only thing that has threatened to overcome it is us. And that fact carries with it an uncomfortable weight of responsibility. Because the threats that the Harpy Eagle faces today are not natural. They are not the product of evolutionary competition or ecological dynamics. They are the product of choices. Economic choices. Political choices. Choices about what we value, about what we are willing to protect, about what kind of world we want to inhabit and leave to those who come after us. The Harpy Eagle cannot make those choices. It can only be what it is, what it has always been, the apex predator of the rainforest, the master of the canopy, the product of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Whether it continues to exist, whether the forests it needs continue to stand, whether the extraordinary web of ecological relationships it is part of continues to function, those questions are answered not by the eagle's extraordinary capabilities but by what we choose to do. The science is clear on what needs to happen. Protecting and expanding the network of protected areas in the eagle's range. Securing and strengthening the land rights of indigenous communities whose territories overlap with critical eagle habitat. Changing the economic incentives that drive deforestation by adequately valuing the ecosystem services that standing forest provides. Combating the direct persecution of eagles through education, law enforcement, and economic alternatives for communities in conflict with the species. Continuing and expanding the research and monitoring programs that track the eagle's status and identify where conservation action is most urgently needed. None of these actions is simple. None of them is cheap. And none of them can be accomplished by any single institution, government, or community acting alone. The conservation of the Harpy Eagle requires the same kind of coordinated, sustained, multi-stakeholder effort that the conservation of the Amazon rainforest itself requires. And that effort is both necessary and possible. There are reasons for genuine optimism. The Harpy Eagle is not yet on the precipice of extinction. Viable populations persist in large areas of intact forest, particularly in the more remote parts of the Amazon basin and in the forests of the Guiana Shield. Conservation programs have demonstrated real successes, from the recovery of locally extirpated populations through reintroduction to the growing engagement of local communities as active partners in eagle conservation. Protected area networks in several countries have been expanded in recent years, providing stronger protection for critical eagle habitat. An international awareness of the importance of Amazon conservation, driven partly by the well-documented relationship between tropical deforestation and global climate change, has been growing. The next several decades will be decisive. The trajectory of Amazon deforestation in the coming decades will determine whether the Harpy Eagle has enough intact forests to maintain viable populations across its range, or whether the continued loss and fragmentation of habitat pushes the species past the threshold beyond which recovery becomes impossible. The choices made now, the policies adopted, the resources invested, the commitments honored or broken, will determine the answer to that question. And in the face of that uncertainty, the Harpy Eagle continues to do what it has always done. It perches on its emergent tree at the dawn of a new forest morning, its facial disc oriented to catch the first sounds of the forest waking, its extraordinary eyes scanning the canopy below with a resolution that sees details invisible to any other observer. It is complete. It is perfect. It is the product of a creative process so ancient and so powerful that we can barely grasp its scale. And it waits, as it has always waited, with the patience of an apex predator that knows its world, for the moment when the forest below will reveal its next opportunity. May that moment come again. And again. And again, for as long as this extraordinary bird and its extraordinary forest endure. The Harpy Eagle is more than a bird. It is a mirror in which we can see the full power and complexity of the natural world, and in which we are invited, or perhaps compelled, to see ourselves as well. To see what it means to be part of an ecosystem, to depend on a web of relationships that we did not create and cannot fully understand. To see what it means to hold power over something magnificent and fragile. And to be asked by the simple, extraordinary existence of this bird in its forest, what we intend to do with that power. The answer to that question is not found in laboratories or libraries or conference rooms, though all of those play a role. It is found in the choices that individuals, communities, governments, and institutions make, every day, about how they relate to the natural world that sustains all of us. It is found in the values we hold and the priorities we express through our actions. And it is found, perhaps most powerfully, in moments like this one. Moments when we stop and really look at what the natural world is, at what the Harpy Eagle is, at what we stand to lose if we fail in our responsibility to protect it. We hope this documentary has given you one of those moments. We hope that the 2 hours you have spent with us exploring the world of the Harpy Eagle have left you with something more than information. We hope they have left you with a sense of the profound privilege of sharing a planet with creatures this extraordinary, and with the motivation that privilege demands. Thank you for watching this documentary on the Harpy Eagle, the apex predator of the South American rainforest. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. We read every comment, and your engagement and your thoughts mean more to us than we can easily express. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so now, because there are many more stories from the natural world waiting to be told, and each one of them matters. Until next time, take care of the world you live in. Because there is only one.